All right. I think we are live. Hello, good evening. Give me a second to just check everything and make sure it's all working fine. If you are here, thanks for joining. So much to talk about today. And literally in the last 5 minutes, I'm just reading about things Donald Trump likes to draw, his close personal friend. So that's not one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. But you know the drill. If you're here already, you can always support this channel by going to patreon.com/hemant. I always appreciate that. And you can always just subscribe to my newsletter for free or not, your choice, by going to friendlyatheist.com. Den is here to help out with moderation. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment thread. Den will make sure I see them at the end of the various stories. And I'm going to go ahead and get started because there's so much we got to talk about. There's like I'm going to start off by talking about this church in California and its pastor. And there are two different elements to this story, both of which have made news in the past like week or two, and I haven't had a chance to discuss them yet. Let me start with the one that doesn't have to do with the pastor. This involves a place called Grace Community Church. And there is a new lawsuit that a woman has filed against this particular church because of what she says has everything to do with the way the church treated her. And I will say this about any lawsuit when it comes down. Um, Whoops, I am checking this out. 1 second here. I don't know what that box is all about. Why am I in a box? I'll start over in just a second. What is with the box? Uh, I will see. That's so weird. Why is there a box doing all these sorts of boxy things? Do you all know? Did I get in trouble face tracking? Why am I boxed in here? I don't know how to get rid of that. That's annoying as hell. I know. Sorry. We'll pause for a second while I figure out what the hell's going on. Um If I move, it's back. That's so weird. It was never there before. I'm going to play around with some stuff and you will all talk amongst yourselves. Let me see if I could figure something out, because that is going to get very annoying. If I move around, though, it comes back. How do I get rid of this autofocus? Is that purely a camera thing? I'm going to play with this for a second and I'm going to see if I could turn the tracking off. One moment while you converse amongst yourselves, and I'm going to put up a little thing here. All right, all. One moment. Be patient. I am coming back only to see if any of you, is it gone? Is it gone? I don't know. You can tell me if it's gone or not. Um, I hope, maybe. Do you see a box on my head? All right. You were going to tell me if you see a box on my head for like auto tracking. I hope I turned it off and everything is okay. You will tell me if that's the case. Are we good? No box. Are we successful? All right. Maybe we are. Okay. Let's try that again. Sorry about that. Um, Now I need to recalibrate myself. Okay. Let's try that again. So there's a couple stories I want to start out with tonight. The first one is like part one of two. It involves a church in California called Grace Community Church. And this place has been in the news many times before, but I've never seen anything like this. And basically, a woman who used to attend the church is suing the church because she says they've wronged her. And I've heard a lot of stories about people saying, I used to go to this church. I don't like what they did to me. And usually a lawsuit doesn't really get anywhere because our secular legal system says whatever happens within a religion, that's on you guys. We're not going to get involved unless theoretically they did something criminal, in which case we'll jump in. And usually this stuff, and in fact, this lawsuit, it's not necessarily something criminal at first. But anyway, let's talk about that. The lawsuit was filed by a woman named Lorraine Zelinsky, and she sued this church, which is headed up by a guy named John MacArthur. We'll talk about him in part two. But basically, Zelinsky says in her lawsuit that back in 2022, she wanted to get a separation from her husband. But this church is one of those fundamentalist Christian churches that says you can't just get a divorce, especially, I mean, there's really only a couple reasons you're allowed to get divorced. And him being physically and emotionally abusive, which is what she was talking to them about, they're like, that's not one of the things that is acceptable. But if you want to get a divorce when you are a member of that church, you agree when you sign a contract to be one of their members to go through their counseling process. So she began meeting with Grace Community Church's counselors a few years ago because she was thinking about getting this separation. And her husband is also a member of the church. Presumably, he would have to do the same thing. She said to the counselors, he is physically and emotionally abusive toward her and her daughter. In fact, she told them that the stress of what he was putting them through was causing her to have health issues. And she genuinely worried that he would, and I'm quoting here, smother her in her sleep with a pillow. I'm not kidding. Let me show you this. Look at number 13 right here. There we go. Let's try that again. Ooh, I don't like that at all. There we go. Look at number 13. Plaintiff told the counselors that she was afraid her husband would smother her with a pillow. And then look at number 15. Plaintiff also described her daughter's fear of her father, noting her daughter would comment, Mom, I'm afraid to go to bed. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of dad. I'm afraid. So this is beyond just, I'm not in love anymore. This guy's gonna hurt me and my daughter if we stay together in the same household. Like a normal counselor would have told her, you need to protect yourself and tell her to get the separation and get the hell out of there, but not Grace Community Church. They told her, counselors there told her she needs to stay put because divorce is apparently a far worse sin than remaining unhappily married and further victimized. Not only that, they told her she needed to properly submit to her husband. This church takes submission very, very seriously. And basically, it became clear to this woman, the men who run this church really do not care about my well-being. And so she knew that the only way she could really get this separation was, one, to get the hell out of the church and resign as a member. And then she would at least be free to do whatever the hell she needed to do without dealing with another problem in her life. In fact, one of the people at the church, one of the leaders, one of the counselors at this church told her, if you really want to go through with this divorce, and it kind of sounds like you have a good reason for it, you can't do it while a member of this church because the guy hasn't broken any of the sins we care about. I'm paraphrasing, but he said you need to resign from here and then you can get the separation you need. But guess what happened? When she wanted to do that, when she wanted to leave, they still would not allow her to get out of there. In fact, let me see if I could pull this up here. Basically, according to this woman, she says that when she tried to get out of there, and suddenly this is not popping up. There we go. Check this out, number 26. The Grace Community Church pastor told her she was required to attend a meeting with leadership to discuss her marriage. And if she did not attend, Grace Community Church would publicly share the private information she had shared during counseling with the entire membership. The purpose of this meeting was to ensure she remained with her husband, even though Grace Community Church knew about his acts of her reports of physical abuse. So she wanted to resign from this church. She spoke to the church basically saying she wanted to resign. They would not let her resign. And then they basically threatened her and they said, no, you need to fix your marriage before we even consider letting you resign. And by the way, if you don't go through with fixing it, we're going to tell everyone in the church all of your business. As if she had done something wrong that the church as a whole needed to be told everything that she had done. By the way, this is a church of like tens of thousands of people. So she did not end up going to that meeting with them. And guess what the church did? They blabbed all about her personal life details to the entire church. And I don't know why they did it other than this is what they do. But basically, I think they wanted to use peer pressure to convince this woman not to leave her husband, not to resign from the church. And to make matters worse, when they told the congregation all of this, they acted like it was her fault that that this marriage wasn't working because of her. And they never mentioned anything significant about what the husband was doing. And then she decided to send a letter to the elders of the church because clearly going through the motions was not working. Following their rules was not working. So she sent them a letter and she said, you guys, I don't really want a divorce yet, but I do want a separation. And she even told them, you know who does want a divorce? My husband, who you are not mad about at all for some reason. And he not only does he want a divorce, he's already making plans to get married to somebody else. They did not care about this. She went on to say in other things, check out this. This is from the Christian Post, which ran an article about this. Between her experience and others whom she had talked to, Zelinsky concluded that at Grace, men were believed and their statements were accepted as true. Women were often disbelieved or ignored or dismissed as less discerning and more gullible, and there was never any meaningful accountability for the men. Yikes. So this is not great news. Among other things, so now she has filed this lawsuit, and what she says in the lawsuit is that the church violated her right to privacy and her right to free association, basically saying, I should have the freedom to enter a religion and leave the religion, and you're not letting me leave. And that's like cult-like behavior. And the state of California says, I have the freedom to walk in and out of a religion. She also says you violated my right to privacy. I consulted you like as a client and a counselor, and you're supposed to keep my personal shit private, and yet you blabbed about it to the entire church. That actually violates a state law as well. So the church is not just like doing bad things as a church, it's violating state law. She also said they caused emotional distress, They maligned her in front of the congregation. They interfered in her divorce. And this is incredible. She says the church shared personal details that she told her counselor with her husband to give him an advantage in court. An advantage is the phrase she used. So I do not know if this lawsuit will succeed because generally courts like to stay hands off when it comes to churches treating people badly because they don't like to interfere with how a church operates. And you can imagine why they would do that. But I do want to show you that, like, Grace Community Church has made it very clear that their rules are very strict about this stuff. For example, they have a page on their website that says when you're allowed to get divorced. And look at this, the grounds for divorce. The only New Testament grounds for divorce are sexual sin or desertion by an unbeliever. If your spouse cheats on you, okay, we will allow you to get divorced. And if they lost religious faith, they're an atheist now, well, then, yeah, we get it. You don't have to be with them. But notice, if you're not in love anymore, that's not a reason you're allowed to get divorced. What if he's physically abusing you? You're not allowed to get divorced. Like, this is the way the church controls its members. There's also another thing it says on their website. This is on a section called church discipline. And look at what it says. How do we discipline you if you've basically committed a sin? And they cite a Bible verse and they said there's 4 steps when it comes to church discipline. 1, we will tell you your sins alone. We will privately tell you you have done something wrong and not tell the entire world about it. Like, just between us. Hey, you're making a mistake. Number 2, we'll bring some witnesses in so they can see me telling you you have done something wrong. So it's not just my word versus yours. We got some witnesses here. Number 3, if you still haven't fixed the problem, now we're going to tell everything that you have done to the entire church. Like, we're going to put you on a jumbotron and show your private shit to the entire world. Not that that happens. And then number 4, we're basically going to shun you. We're going to treat you like an outsider and make your life a living hell. Because the thing about being in a church like this, and this is also true of the Mormon Church, Jehovah's Witnesses, with disfellowshipping, is when you become a member of a church like this that is so cultish, your entire life is wrapped up in it. Your free time is spent volunteering with the church or going to a service. Your friends are all in the church. Your money goes to the church. So that means if you want to leave the church, they're taking away everything you do. You're not just leaving a church. You're getting rid of your friends, your social safety net. If you get sick or lose a job, the church may help you, but if you leave, sorry, you're out of luck and you're on your own. So they really tie you in to their whole bubble. And so number 4, treating you like an outsider, that's basically their way of saying you're dead to us. And we're going to make sure you are starting off with absolutely nothing if you leave. This is the way they do discipline in this church. So that's disturbing. They also say, by the way, in the same section on church discipline, don't worry, we're not going to do steps 3 and 4. We're not going to tell the church about all this stuff unless you make us. Look at this. The elders will routinely send a letter by registered mail to make sure you got it, warning the individual that the 3rd or 4th step of discipline will be taken if they have not received word of repentance by a specific date. When this date has passed, the person's sin and refusal to repent are made known publicly either before the entire assembly during a communion service or through a fellowship group in which the person is known. And that, if you don't know what that means, this is just pure evil. We're either going to tell the entire church what sin you committed at a time when we know everyone's at church, or if you really only communicate with our church through your small groups with your friends, we're going to tell that circle of friends what you did. It's their way of keeping you in line if you've done something wrong. And I want to remind you, they're telling this to a woman whose big sin is she wants to leave her husband because she's afraid for her life and her daughter's life. So you can understand why she is suing. I will say, why would you sign a contract to be a member of a church like this? I think a lot of people do it because, one, they don't think they're going to sin. They're going to church to keep themselves in line, but they don't really read the fine print and they don't really think forward to, oh, needing to separate from your partner is a thing that just happens. It's not a good or bad thing. It's a thing that does realistically happen. But in a church like this, they treat that as you've committed some sort of obvious sin. Um, why else would you join a church like this? Because you don't actually understand what that sort of emotional blackmail actually entails until it happens to you. So it is cult-like behavior by a church that insists it is definitely not a cult. So anyway, this is the lawsuit. This is what's going on here. There's one other aspect to this I just want to remind you about if you haven't seen this yet, because I think it is relevant here. This is not the first time this church has dealt with something like this. In fact, in 2004, a former staffer at Grace Community Church was charged with, and I'm reading this directly, with aggravated child molestation, child abuse, and corporal injury to a child. Not only was he charged with these crimes in 2004, horrible, horrible crimes, he was later sentenced to prison. He is in jail right now serving a 21-year-long sentence. But the reason this is important, and this is an article from the Roy's Report, which does investigative reporting on churches. Look at this. And what's the dateline on this? This is 2022. On February 20th, 2004, David Gray, a former teacher at John MacArthur's Grace Community Church, was charged with all of these horrible things. 5 days later, after the guy was charged with these crimes, Carrie Hardy, an associate pastor at this church and personal assistant to John MacArthur, emailed a letter to the church, which was reportedly posted on their website. And in the letter, he defended the dude and challenged the credibility of his wife, Eileen Gray, whom Grace Community Church had shamed and excommunicated 18 months earlier because she wanted to separate from this guy. And she also reported his abuse to the police in 2003. So just to recap that, this woman said, I want to leave my husband. I think he's abusive. And the church said what the church always says. No, you're not allowed to leave. Physical abuse isn't one of the 2 reasons you're allowed to get a divorce. And what happened shortly after that, 18 months later? The guy was actually arrested and charged with committing these abusive acts against kids. So the woman was right when she made those allegations against him. And yet, what did the church do? They went through that discipline process. They told the entire church this woman has committed a horrible sin. Not the guy. Don't worry about the guy. The guy is one of our people. And by the way, we're going to shun her. And so no one here is allowed to communicate with her. Yikes. So after the dude gets charged with these crimes, the church is supportive of him. They blame the wife for spreading nasty allegations about him. And in fact, during a sermon in 2002, guess what John MacArthur said to the crowd? Look at this. This is from a separate article about the same issue. According to MacArthur, Gray's sin, the woman's sin, was that she had decided to leave her husband, to grant no grace at all to him, to take the children, to go away, to forsake him. This, MacArthur emphasized, meant rejecting all the instruction and counsel of the elders, all instruction from the word of God. And MacArthur then encouraged the church to pray for this woman and to treat her as an unbeliever. For all we know, she may be. She's like an atheist to us. She's dead to us, and none of you are allowed to be friends with her anymore. Don't talk to her anymore. She doesn't deserve your friendship. These people are monsters. So that's the way they handle these types of situations in that church. And there's one postscript to this entire story, which is that in 2022, almost 2 decades later, there was an elder at this church, one of the top leaders at this church, who was looking at this story because he wasn't there when all this happened, but he was going through that story and he realized, oh, you guys, we're the bad ones here. We're the baddies. We made a big mistake. That woman was right. Her husband was a monster. We should we should apologize to her. And not just to her, we should tell the congregation, look, we made a big mistake with that woman years ago. And guess what happened when this elder did that? His name is Hon Cho, and this is from Christianity Today. As a lawyer and one of the 4 officers on the elder board at Grace Community Church, Cho was asked to study the case. He tried to convince the church's leaders to reconsider and at least privately make it right. He said Pastor John MacArthur told him to forget it. When Cho continued to call the elders to do justice on the woman's behalf, he said he was asked to walk back his conclusions or resign. What the hell? Like, it's just a church full of the worst human beings imaginable. Cho, by the way, there's another organization called the Association of Certified Biblical Counselors, and it's a random group, but they give a stamp of approval to churches who have counselors to say, yes, they're doing it right. And Cho asked this organization, hey, Grace Community Church is listed as like a certified biblical counselor place. We train other counselors. You should not allow this church of mine to train counselors because we do very bad things. And that association said, we're not going to remove Grace Community Church from our list, maybe because it's run by John MacArthur, who's a very powerful guy. They ended up removing 1 pastor from their list of approved counselors, but that's it. So, like, this whole Christian bubble that they are in exists to prop up the worst people imaginable. So I say all that to say, I don't know how this lawsuit's going to go. I wish all the best for the woman who is suing them, but what a story she tells. And it's not a story that seems out of place. It seems very much in line with the way this church has been run for so many years. Okay, so that's part 1 of Grace Community Church. Part 2 about John MacArthur's in a second, but let me pause here for a bit. Thanks for sticking with me through that technical glitch at the beginning. What questions, comments do you all have right now? And then I'll move on with part 2 here. What do we have, Dan? Women can't win in church. Unfortunately, that's true. It's so many churches. Like, they can't speak. When they do speak up, they are dismissed, discounted, ignored. It's a bad situation, especially at patriarchal churches like these, which are the ones that believe only men can be pastors. Only men have any authority. Women should just submit in every situation. It's a universal rule for them. Lawsuit isn't enough. There needs to be some prosecutorial intervention. And this is the thing. I don't think there will be, because by and large, our country allows churches to set their own rules, as emotionally abusive as they may be. And as long as, and again, we've seen what the Supreme Court has done with all this in recent years. If you sincerely believe whatever horrible things you believe, the law basically lets you get away with it. So if you're running a business, but you're a Christian who thinks trans people don't exist, guess what? You're allowed to discriminate against trans people. It doesn't matter what the laws are. If you think gay marriage is wrong, you can discriminate against your own employees that way. So same thing here. There won't be any prosecutorial intervention, and there may not even be a legit hearing for this lawsuit, because our courts have long said, whatever, it's the church. They can run their church however they want, but you do have a right to leave the religion. And if the church traps you inside, now you're breaking a secular law. And I should reiterate, the woman is saying this church broke secular laws. So I hope they take it seriously. I just don't know if the judge is going to say, like, the churches are allowed to do it. You signed up for this. We don't get a say here. Wait, the husband wanted to remarry? Then that's adultery and a biblical reason for divorce. So what the F is the issue? I don't know if the husband committed adultery. I don't know that. But in the lawsuit, she says, my husband's already ready to move on with his life. He's ready. He knows who he's going to marry after me. I just want out. I don't think that counts as adultery unless there's proof he has done the deed. I don't know that detail. But again, the whole point is, they're letting this guy off the hook for doing exactly what the woman is basically saying, which is, I just want to end this marriage. and both of the people involved seem to want to end it. She has good reasons for ending it. He has whatever his reasons are. And the church is like, we can't allow you to do that, which is disturbing for other reasons. Are churches really effective as social safety nets? That's a fair question, because I mentioned that when they shun you, they're cutting off your access to what they provide. And this is the thing churches can be very good at, which is being a social safety net. If you lose your job, and you go to a big mega church, not only will they have like directories of church owned businesses, like here's all the members in our churches, here are the businesses they belong to. You should shop there, you should do business with them. And by the way, if you lose your job, maybe someone in the church will hire you because, you're one of the tribe. So in that sense, it can be very helpful. What if you just have had a baby, or you just lost a loved one and you're grieving? The churches in general can be very good at making sure there is someone looking after you, checking in with you, bringing you food, helping you out if people are sick. They can be very good at that. I mean, that's what you want out of any close-knit community, right? The problem is this church uses that to blackmail you if you are not stepping in line. Because that's what this woman did. She did something the church didn't like, and they threatened to yank that safety net out from under her. And for a lot of people, even if you are mentally checked out and you don't even believe in God anymore, they can't leave. And they say they can't leave because it would mean not just leaving the church. That's kind of easy. They're losing their friends. They might lose their job. They might lose everything that they do with their free time and their money. And I mean, it's hard enough to start from scratch after you break up or end a relationship. But now imagine your job is taken away from you and your friends are taken away from you. Like, what do you do? That's why a lot of people, I think I've heard this in the Jehovah's Witness crowd, PIMO, I'm physically in, but I'm mentally out, PIMO. And that's the case for a lot of people. They have to stay physically in because they don't know what to do outside. It's like Shawshank Redemption, right? You can't leave jail because what do you do out there in the real world? Okay, he resigned, right? We're talking about who? John MacArthur, the church? I have a better answer for you than that, and I'll get to that in part 2. The lawyer, the guy who was the whistleblower. That's a good question. I think he did leave. In fact, the reason that story became a thing is because that guy, his name again was Hon Cho, he did leave Grace Community Church after that incident. And then he told his story about it because he wants people to know how messed up it is there. So, yes. No more boxes anymore. Thanks so much. All right, let me get to part 2 of this story, which is completely different. Give me a second here to pull this up. Okay. So the guy I was just talking about in the previous story, the leader of Grace Community Church, it's this guy. That's John MacArthur. He's the guy who's been around for decades. I believe he founded that church. He is arguably one of the most influential fundamentalist, patriarchal Christian preachers in the world. Like when he speaks, a lot of Christians absolutely listen. And this guy, I've talked about him before. He's disturbing for a lot of reasons. Some of them are not new, but I want to mention a couple things about this guy. Why does this guy ever make news in the secular world? Why does he ever cross my plate? A couple reasons. Well, for one example, in 2018, he criticized a different Christian ministry. Why? Because they honored Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's it. He was so mad that they honored him. He actually told his congregation that King was not a Christian at all, and that Reverend King was a, quote, non-believer who misrepresented everything about Christ and the gospel. He also lies about he lies in the name of Jesus all the time. He has denied climate change. He said God intended us to use this planet and that it is a disposable planet. He had when COVID was happening, he celebrated the lack of social distancing and the lack of face masks in his congregation. In fact, in the height of the pandemic in mid 2020, he ignored all the social distancing rules, told everyone to come to his church, no masks, no social distancing. This is months before vaccines were available to anybody. And he actually said to them, the good news is you're here, you're not distancing, and you're not wearing masks. And then in August of 2020, he said, there is no pandemic. This is after like over 1 million people had died. And by the way, that October, there was a COVID outbreak at his church. He also has said, and this is a direct quote, no one is gay. He said this in California. So, like, this is a conspiracy theorist who regurgitates lies while telling a bunch of ignorant people that they are all facts. And this is when he's not doing his day job of being a misogynist, sexist, homophobe, etc. Now, here's why I'm talking about him. Earlier this year, this guy is 86. Earlier this year, he was in the hospital for a variety of health issues. His church actually said he needed a heart valve replacement. And that was news to me. I didn't know he had one of those, a heart. And then last week, his church said he has pneumonia and things are not looking good. And they also said, by the way, since he hasn't been around for a while, our church is losing a lot of money because he's the star attraction. So they recently announced budget cuts. Haha, oh well, so sad. So why do I bring all this up? There was some news this week about this guy, which is that he's dead now. Yeah, John MacArthur is dead. Completely gone. Do you want the obituary? Here's the obituary. He was a racist, sexist, conspiracy theorist who protected abusers. That's his legacy. That's the obit. So he died earlier this week. But the reason there's a thing I want to talk about his life, which I think is really fascinating, because when this happened, when he died, I'll stop smiling for the optics. When he died, a lot of major newspapers, a lot of Christian media, they published their obituaries on the guy. I'm sure they were pre-written because this guy's been on his deathbed for a very long time. But a lot of them just kind of said, because again, I'm not mad at them for writing straight obituaries, but they just said he was very influential, he was very controversial, but this is what he did. Okay, fine. What I really appreciated, this is fascinating. This is an article that appeared in Baptist News Global, basically a very large wire outlet, in a sense, for Baptists around the world. But look at this title. This is shortly after he died. John MacArthur met his own definition of a false prophet. John MacArthur loved saying, I'm the right Christian. I'm the right kind of Christian. Everyone at this church is being the right kind of Christian, and everybody else is wrong and faking it, and we all need to call them out because they're bad Christians. And it's like, this guy didn't live up to his own standards. But look at what got published in this Baptist news site. How should we respond when someone who uses theology to promote ignorant, misogynistic, racist, power-mongering authoritarianism dies? How's that for an opening? After 55 years of using the church to promote his own power, John MacArthur, the wicked warlock of the West, is dead. Holy shit. Like, again, I don't expect this from any mainstream outlet. I definitely did not expect this coming from even a Baptist news outlet. And I know there are progressive Baptists out there, but in any religious outlet, I was not expecting this. By the way, there's another thing John MacArthur was famous for. There's a Bible teacher named Beth Moore who used to be Southern Baptist. I think she's just Christian now. She left the Southern Baptist because lots of reasons. But after she was very outspoken of a lot of the bad stuff going on in the Baptist world, John MacArthur basically, I forgot if he tweeted this or he just said it, but his response to Beth Moore, Go home. Like basically get in the kitchen. That's where you belong. How dare you speak about the Bible? That's what this guy's good for. Anyway, back to this article. Um, I won't go through everything, but this is amazing. All the spiritual abuse MacArthur perpetrated from his pulpit stemmed from his fundamental understanding of reality. Like he was abusive, no doubt, because he was a true believer that that's what you needed to be. He saw all reality through the lens of power and submission. And he believes you need to submit to God. All of you need to submit to me as your preacher because I have the direct line to God. And women need to submit to the men who need to submit to me, who submits to God. You get how this goes. This is amazing. He's also racist. So to MacArthur, white Europeans are blessed and enlarged thanks to being in a peaceful partnership with Israel, while black Africans are cursed to do the serving. MacArthur also used dehumanizing language about black people. You could see it right there. Don't make me say it. But he's said some very, very horrible things about black people. And basically he says that's the curse of Ham. That's in the book of Genesis. That's why they have the skin color that they have, because God cursed them. Yeah, he was racist too. We know, but this is a really thorough thing. So, of course, MacArthur couldn't imagine the idea of a woman. Oh, this is the Beth Moore thing. The idea of a woman standing behind a pulpit. As everyone was celebrating MacArthur's 50th year in the pulpit, he told Beth Moore, a conservative evangelical Bible teacher, Bible study leader, to go home. Yes, we talked about that. So, fascinating obituary right here. And this is the ending. If there is a Jesus and a judgment in the afterlife, then MacArthur had better hope, despite his decades of preaching retribution, that justice turns out to be restorative rather than retributive. Sorry, I'm pronouncing that wrong. As the books are opened on his life, the verdict is clear. MacArthur doesn't deserve a memorial or a monument. He deserves a millstone, which is what you put around the neck of those who have sinned, according to the Bible. So, fascinating obituary. And I will say that was written by this guy, Rick Pidcock, who graduated from Bob Jones University, one of the most fundamentalist Christian schools in the country. And I don't think he's a fundy anymore. You can tell, but good for him. I mean, that was a great article. Well, here's what's interesting. After he published that piece, he shared this on Blue Sky. John MacArthur's words about what a false prophet's followers will be like on the left of your screen, set next to responses from his followers today to me pointing that out. And this is what those followers said to Rick. They basically did like Trumpy insults. Right wing, alpha male. Rick sits down to pee. Rick abuses his own wife by making her work so he can stay safe in the protection of his own home. Oh, stay at home dad with pronouns in his bio. I think I've seen enough. This is the way they're responding to him criticizing John MacArthur. So, okay, that's interesting. But wait, it gets even more interesting because the same outlet, Baptist News Global, the guy who is the editor of the entire website, Mark Wingfield, the executive director and publisher of Baptist News Global, the next day he published his own article about John MacArthur. And look at what this one is titled. When is the right time to speak the truth about toxic people? This one's even better than the last one. I highlighted so many things in here, but look at this. When someone who has harmed real people over and over again dies, we need to pause and consider that reality. In part because those who are tempted to harm others need to understand they will have a payday someday, and in part because it's so painful for those who are victimized to hear others heap laurels on the person who harmed them. And of course, he is talking about MacArthur, because so many people said to his colleague, like, why are you doing this? Why are you trashing John MacArthur? The man just died. The man brought a lot of people to Christ. The man influenced so many preachers. How dare you speak ill of him right after he dies? And this response is saying, well, when's the right time? And I love that response because we see this not just with preachers, but like after a mass shooting, we see this all the time, right? like Republicans constantly, don't talk about gun policy or gun safety. This is not the time. A mass shooting just happened. How dare you? And it's like, well, when's the right time to talk about gun safety? Because we sure as hell are not talking about it right now. Same thing happened with the flooding in Texas that just happened recently. When should we talk about the irresponsible leadership at FEMA and alert systems for natural disasters? If now is not the time to talk about it, and by the way, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, was asked about that. Like, were there deficiencies? What are you going to do about it? And he yelled at the reporter for even bringing that up. How dare you? People have died. Don't ask us about that stuff. Trump did that too, I think. Like, the right time to talk about problems is as soon as possible and often and always. Otherwise, they're never going to get fixed. And some people never want to talk about them because they never want to fix the problem. And so I appreciate that this outlet is saying, yeah, we're going to talk about this now. Let me reiterate. John MacArthur did more harm to the cause of Christ than Paul Pressler, who is a Southern Baptist leader who is accused of sexual harassment, credibly accused. And that's saying a hell of a lot. Pressler took control of one denomination. MacArthur influenced pastors and lay leaders across evangelical Christianity and taught them to be mean-spirited, divisive, judgmental, and absolutely certain he alone held God's truth. That is the definition of a cult leader, not a pastor. Holy shit, let's keep going. MacArthur's theology was and remains toxic. It was and remains abusive. It was and remains untrue to the spirit of Jesus Christ. Not to say so, especially at his death, is to be complicit with allowing that theology to go unchecked. Unbelievable. And by the way, I'm going to pause right here. Den, do you want to bring this up? I'm just seeing this in the comment thread right now as we talk about a toxic person's death. And I'm hearing this for the first time. Aha. Interesting. He's publicly gone against Trump today. Sorry. How dare you all get my hopes up like that? Anyway, so John MacArthur, yes, now is the time to talk about what a horrible, horrible person he was. And this goes on. Just because someone dies doesn't mean they suddenly turn into a saint. Yes. Oh my God. I'm going to keep reading this because it is the most cutting obituary I think I've read about a horrible person. If we are going to note his passing, we must tell the full story because the evil lives on. When is the right time to tell the truth about a prominent figure who has passed? A week later? A month later? When we try to bury the evil a person did with their bones, we leave behind horrible ghost stories. I mean, man, live your life so that no one ever writes that sort of shit about you. And this is the thing. Every time I read an obituary this week about John MacArthur, a straight obituary, just a news obituary, they did mention the controversies. They did mention some of the nasty things he said and the way he functioned. They mentioned it. But none of them, because news, none of them just said, yeah, he was a horrible person and the world is better off without him in it. And so the fact that this religious news outlet is saying, yeah, let's just call him out and we got to do it now while people are paying attention. Good on Mark Wingfield for writing that. Kudos to Rick Pidcock for writing that, both for Baptist News Global. And that's the way John MacArthur should be remembered, as a nasty human being who made the world a worse place than he started with. So good riddance. Not sorry he's gone. You know, there are some Christian leaders, people I strongly disagree with, who, when they die, I have seen in Christian outlets, Christian media outlets, other news outlets, an outpouring of grief. And people saying, you know, even if we disagreed, this guy was genuinely nice. I cannot remember how many people have died leaving a legacy like this, where so many people are like, yeah, I mean, I'm not sad about it. Grace Community Church is a horrible place. They treat people horribly. Even if he's gone, that church is probably not going to change its ways. You know, there are a couple other people in this world that when they die, there will be people celebrating their death because everyone will be better off when they're gone. You tempted me with one earlier in this segment, but good on them for writing it. And that's the legacy. That's the horrible, toxic legacy John MacArthur has left behind. What questions do we have here? Well, ding dong. Indeed, the warlock is dead. If being supportive of anyone who's not exactly like you is against their religion, I am against their religion. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I totally understand. Listen, I'm a progressive lefty atheist. I'm in plenty of groups that have tried to instill purity tests in what they do. And you're not going to accomplish much if you have these purity tests. But when you go from, listen, there are some people I disagree with, but we have to work together because we're working against a common enemy. John MacArthur is very much like, oh, you only agree with me 99% of the time. You're the devil. And he made sure everyone at his church knew this too. I mean, that's why he's such a horrible person. It's not just he has a broken brain. It's that he made sure everyone in his church became as horrible as he did, unless you were one of the few who happened to break free at some point. They say that about him without a hint of irony or self-reflection. I don't know what we're talking about on that one. I don't know if you're talking about like the Baptist people writing about John MacArthur without that hint. But again, there are progressive Baptists. There are plenty of people who say, you know, I'm pissed off at the Southern Baptist Convention for the way they're mishandling sexual abuse. There are people within the fold that call out the worst elements of it. And if the worst thing I can say about them is, well, they believe in a lot of BS. Okay, I mean, I do think that. But at the same time, if they're working within that environment to try to make it better, I don't know. I can give credit where it's due in that regard, I guess. Celebrating someone's death sounds monstrous. You know what's also monstrous? Using your life to harm other people, which is what John MacArthur did. So, you know, I disagree on this front. There are some people you can absolutely celebrate when they're gone because they never did anything redeeming with their life, no matter how much they try to convince you otherwise. Speaking of false prophets, does anyone know how Trump's prophets are handling the current situation? I assumed, Den, that you were talking about like the Epstein crisis and all of that, and they have gone back and forth. A lot of the right-wing MAGA crowd has gone from release all the Epstein files to, you guys, just trust in Trump. He knows what he's doing. But also their base. I mean, I've never seen anything rip apart the MAGA base like this story has. Just as we're doing this, the Wall Street Journal just broke a story before I went live about how he drew a racy picture to Epstein that is not appropriate for children for his 50th birthday or something like that. So they're not handling it well. A lot of the prophets are basically calling this a psyop, that this is Biden's fault somehow. There's a lot of rationalizing going on among the MAGA cultists. And it's kind of funny to watch, but also, will any of this matter during the next election? I don't know. I feel like they will have forgotten it because, you know, smooth brains don't help you remember stuff. So I don't think they're going to really remember this when midterms come around or the next election comes around. Oh, thank you for that donation, Sonic Shroom. Did you hear Trump's recent speech at the Faith Luncheon? I did. It sounded very much to me that he was outlining his recent conspiratorial work to give Christian leaders more power in government. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Trump says a lot of stuff to the faith people. He said a lot of horrific things that they were applauding. He took credit for things he had nothing to do with. He's celebrating the demise of the Johnson Amendment for now anyway, which they loved. But basically, he had this faith luncheon. It's just evangelical Christians. It's predominantly white evangelical Christians. And this is what he does every time he thinks he's speaking to that crowd. He sprinkles in a couple Bible verses that someone told him to mention. And he just does a campaign rally, and these people eat it up because they're in the room. They have access. That's all they ever wanted. They feel powerful. They can go back to their congregations and say, Trump loves me. and you should love me and give me money for my ministry, etc. Like, none of these people are ethical, decent people. All right, I'm gonna jump to a different story. We're done talking about MacArthur. All right, give me 1 second here. I'm gonna play. All right, I'm gonna play a video for you, and I just want you to note how mad this dude I'm about to show you is. And then I'm gonna tell you what he's actually talking about, and you're gonna be like, that's why he was so angry. Okay, watch this clip, then we'll talk about it.
They have seemed so solid, so wholesome for so long, and then this. Well, this really is a satanic Trojan horse, where the enemy has commandeered Magnolia as a Trojan horse. That's what this is. Lull to sleep, wholesome. Get it in every single corner of your house. Consume it all day long. Trust them completely. And then have the agenda of normalizing same-sex marriage with these two poor souls of sons, and have Chip Gaines say, what family-friendly viewing. That's a Trojan horse. It's demonic, it's evil, and I hope the Lord burns all of it to the ground until they repent. And I mean that, because Amen. This is wicked. This is wicked.
This is wicked.
This is wicked. He said, I want to repeat that last part. It's demonic, it's evil, and I hope the Lord burns all of it to the ground until they repent. That, by the way, that was Brooks Pottinger. That is also Pete Hegseth's pastor. So that's where Hegseth's getting this stuff from. Who is he talking about? He is talking about Chip and Joanna Gaines. That's them. If you've seen them over the past decade, they had a show on HGTV. They are home remodeling people. I don't know. I don't watch HGTV. It's not my go-to. I'm doing the dishes and I need something in the background. So I don't necessarily know their shtick, but they're super popular. They are so popular because they project wholesomeness, and they're good, faithful Christians who also happen to have personalities that are endearing to a lot of viewers, and they will remodel your home, and I don't know, whatever it is they do, but they sell a lot of stuff. Their company is called Magnolia, and they have a big shop where they sell stuff from in Texas. Very popular people. They now have their own TV network because they do this full time. Anyway, that's Chip and Joanna Gaines. So why are they in the news, and why are Christians so mad at them this week? Well, basically, this couple, they're launching a brand new show on their network. It's a reality show called Back to the Frontier. And the premise here is, what if we took a family and plopped them on a farm like it was 1880? And that means no running water, no electricity, no computers, obviously, no modern amenities. What do these families do? And so that's the premise of the reality show, which again, yeah, that sounds like a typical reality show. And this just started airing, I think, recently. So they have three families who are, I don't even know if they're competing. I think it's just let's just see what happens. But they have three families. One of the families that is on this show, featured on this show, are Jason Hanna and Joe Riggs. And those are two men. And they have their twin boys. And that's one of the families that is on this show. And that's it. As far as I could tell, I was watching some of their Instagram videos. These guys are super photogenic, good-looking family, and they seem really fun to, if you were having drinks with them in a bar, you would enjoy hanging out with them. It's no wonder Chip and Joanna Gaines were like, yeah, put them on the show. They're fun to watch. Okay, fine. So none of this is particularly controversial. Either that type of show appeals to you or it doesn't. You watch it or you don't. No one cares. And the thing about these shows, when they only have three families on there, you don't just want to have three families that are more or less the same. Yes, you have a family with two dads. They have a black family on the show. They have a white family with, I think, a bunch of kids on the show. They have different types of families. And why do you do that? Because it allows you as a producer to tell a bunch of different kinds of stories. That's the whole point. That's why you want diversity in any of these reality shows, because everyone comes to the situation with their own backstory. And that gives you material to work with. This isn't like a DEI thing. This is just basic television production. This is how all reality shows work. So, yeah, it's damn near impossible to find any reality show that doesn't value diversity in as many aspects than they can do. And again, there's only 3 families on the show. You're only going to get a little bit of diversity if you even try. So, I don't know, normal people would watch the trailer and say, all right, this sounds like something I would enjoy or not. And then you move on with your life. Okay. So after the trailer for this show aired and people realized there's a gay couple on it, oh, people got mad. This is Franklin Graham, evangelist. I hope this isn't true, but I read today that Chip and Joanna Gaines are featuring a gay couple in their new series. If it is true, it is very disappointing. While we are to love people, we should love them enough to tell them the truth of God's word. His word is absolute truth. God loves us, and his design for marriage is between one man and one woman. Promoting something that God defines as sin is in itself sin. I mean, I'm not surprised to hear this from Franklin Graham. He fits that profile of John MacArthur, which is when he's gone, a lot of people are going to say a lot of nasty things about this guy. But what I don't get here is that very last line, promoting something. I watched the trailer. I know enough about Chip and Joanna Gaines to tell you this, even though I don't watch any of their shows, which is that their whole brand is we're likable. We are bland. We don't have any opinions. We are not controversial. Don't get mad at us. Like their whole thing is we want everyone to like us and buy our stuff and whatever. So they don't have, you don't go to Chip and Joanna Gaines for hot takes on anything. So the idea that Franklin Graham is saying here, like they are promoting they're not promoting a gay family. They have a gay family on their show because maybe that brings a different dynamic to the table. But that's not promoting gay people. That's not promoting same-sex marriage. It's basically acknowledging that, hey, you know what type of people watch TV? Gay people also do. Yeah, they're part of our viewing audience, and we think more people would be invested in a family like this and maybe watch our show. That's it. It's a production decision. This isn't a theological one. Also, I also take issue with Franklin Graham saying, if this is true, it is very disappointing. How good is this guy's life that he heard that there was a gay couple on a TV show that you know he's never going to watch. And he's like, this is the worst thing to be happening in the world today. Anyway, let's cancel funding for PEPFAR. So that's Franklin Graham. He's pissed. Who else is mad about this? This is good. This is from the American Family Association, a Christian hate group. Chip and Joanna Gaines' new show on their Magnolia network spotlights a same-sex couple and their 2 sons, drawing concern from Christians who expected the network to uphold biblical values. Stop right there. Why would a channel focused on home redecorating promote biblical values? What part of that did you think was going to do it? I have no idea. This is sad and disappointing because Chip and Joanna Gaines have been very influential in the evangelical community. Moreover, in the past, they have stood firm on the sanctity of marriage, regardless of the personal cost that is entailed. I'll get more on that in a second. We are not sure why the Gaines have reversed course, but we are sure of this. Back to the Frontier promotes an unbiblical view of human sexuality, marriage, and family, a view no Christian should embrace. Like, if you're arguing that this show sends you, teaches you bad information, that it's sending the wrong message, do you know how many other shows are on TV that Christians have zero problem with that teach you actual bad things? Without knowing a damn thing about this TV show, I promise you it's about the love of family. because when you have no modern amenities, you basically only have your family. So you got to work together and stick together because they're all you have. I assume that's where the show is going. I would think if you were Christian and you wanted to call that a biblical value, you could do it. These people do not want to do that. Man, these people are so mad. They have no problem, by the way, with the like. I'm very amused by the idea of a black family living in the fake 1880s because I don't think they're really going to bring up any of the issues. But a gay family in the 1880s, oh my goodness. I appreciate this comment from April Ajoy, who is a critic of Christianity because she used to be one of these types of people. The Venn diagram of people who voted for a rapist and people who are outraged over Chip and Joanna Gaines being nice to gay people is a circle. Well played. Who else was mad? This is from a pretend comedian on Twitter. You'll see no hate from me. I'm just sad. He's saying this at Chip Gaines. Like he's saying this to Chip Gaines. I can't let my kids watch your show now since I'm trying to protect their eyes and hearts from the lies of the world, lies you are now participating in. Let's pause there. I can't let my kids watch your show. This guy did not know this show existed 2 seconds ago. But he just got this tweet. My kids will never be able to watch this show. I've shown my kids clips from Squid Game. And this guy's like, what? A wholesome family from the 1880s? I can't let them watch that. What are they going to think? They're going to believe gay people exist in the world. Also, filter out some of the online vitriol and consider taking to heart some of the substantive concerns and heartbreak from the Christians who make up your fan base. What concerns? What heartbreak that they might show that gay couples love each other, that they're humans, that they have the same issues as everyone else does, that they're not monsters. Like, what is it that you're concerned about? Like when you make up reasons to be mad, which is how these white evangelical circles work. Like there's nothing wrong with gay people, but they make up so many reasons. There's nothing wrong with sex, but purity culture is all about how can we make everyone fear it, right? That's this guy. There was another one that amused me too. I'll come back to it in a second if I can find it. But what did Chip Gaines say after all of this? Here's how he responded. Because he did respond over the weekend. Talk, ask questions, listen, maybe even learn. Too much to ask of modern American Christian culture. Judge first, understand later, or never. By the way, this counts as a hot take from Chip Gaines. It is a sad Sunday when non-believers have never been confronted with hate or vitriol until they are introduced to a modern American Christian. Heartbreak. Like, yeah, having a great day. And the only way I see hate on a Sunday morning is when I read the tweets of conservative Christians. That's a pretty nice statement there from Gaines. And guess what? That didn't go over well. If he thought he was placating his fan base, he definitely did not. This is from Matt Walsh, the right-wing culture warrior blogger. This is in response to that post. Maybe you should endeavor to understand the basic moral teachings of your own alleged religion before you give lectures to other people about their lack of understanding. Yeah, because if there's one thing we know about Christianity, it's that there is only one type, and it's whatever Matt Walsh says it is. That's the only type of Christianity that exists. He's Catholic, by the way. So I feel like a lot of evangelicals would take issue with him. So what is this comment about, like, the Gaines used to be against same-sex marriage? Well, several years ago, they did an interview. I think this is with the Billy Graham Evangelical Association magazine. But look at what they said. This is a profile of the Gaines because they were becoming very, very popular. God taught the Gaineses to trust him with everything and to make him their everything. Our family has made a commitment to put Christ first, a lifestyle our parents modeled for us very well. They showed us how to keep our marriage and family centered around God. And this is the thing I was saying earlier. Their whole image is we are wholesome and likable. And yes, we happen to be religious people too. This is why you see so many athletes. Every time there's a press conference or a post-game interview after they win, they give shout outs to God. Why? Yeah, I'm sure they believe it, but also they believe it's good for their image too. Like, I'm a good conservative person that serves as a role model for you. So, hey, brands, if you want me to do commercials for you, you can count on me. I'm wholesome. Like, I get why they would say all this stuff. The reason this ever became an issue is that several years ago, I think we're going back to like 2017 when the Gaineses were becoming really popular. People pointed out that the church that they attend in Texas, the pastor was very anti-gay and had given sermons that were very anti-gay. And so the question is, wait. Chip and Joanna go to this church of this very anti-gay pastor. Are they anti-gay as well? Because presumably, if you go to this church, you either believe the vitriol that is being spewed, or you're not bothered enough by it to walk out. And again, if you are the Gaineses, what do you do at that point? Because you don't want to go anti-gay, but also you don't want to piss off your evangelical fan base. This is what they said at the time. This is from the Christian Post. Sorry, here we go. While Gaines did not specifically address the controversy surrounding the couple's pastor, Jimmy Siebert, of the Antioch Community Church in Waco, Texas, whose teaching that homosexuality is a sin was targeted by LGBT activists who demanded HGTV cancel Fixer Upper, Chip Gaines wrote, that the only way to treat people who are different is with dignity and with love, which sounds nice, but that's basically what the Pope says. Said before, says now. Like, yeah, you treat gay people well. Okay, yes, that's a nice way of distracting people from your actual beliefs about same-sex marriage and whether you think homosexuality is a sin. Like Chip Gaines did not comment on the actual substantive part of that. He tried to just avoid the topic because, again, he doesn't want to do hot takes. And you know what? The controversy basically faded away after that. They went on. They just do their thing. So that's why people think they're anti-gay, even though really what they are is they're business people who don't want to talk about it, which is cowardly, but it could be worse. Okay. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to matter. I'm surprised that it doesn't matter to the right-wing critics that the Gaines are active churchgoers, that they regularly bring up their faith in interviews. These people do not care that their whole brand is we are good Christians who also happen to be decorators and home design people and whatever. Because I would think you would want that. You would want people like that to be on your side. They don't care. Because they are not actively demonizing gay people and immigrants and Democrats or whatever, so many conservatives want to treat them as enemies of the faith. And I find that kind of funny. I wonder, and I never saw this in any of the articles about this controversy. I don't know how many of you remember this, but about 10 years ago, HGTV was planning to launch a show, and it was the hosts were going to be twin brothers named David and Jason Benham, Benham. They were these two like strapping young white men, and they were going to do this home decorating show. And after HGTV announced they were going to launch the show with the Benham brothers, Right Wing Watch said, hey, we know things they have preached at their church or their father has preached, and we know how anti-gay it is. And they posted clips, and it was really bad. And HGTV soon posted this tweet at the time. HGTV has decided not to move forward with the Benham Brothers series. Like, HGTV canceled that entire show because the anti-gay nature of those brothers at a time when Obama was still in office and, you could actually be proud of things. That wasn't a good look for HGTV. So they just canceled the show altogether. They actually launched a show with a different evangelical Christian named Jen Hatmaker, who, by the way, also opposed marriage equality, but she didn't spew fire and brimstone like those two guys did. I wonder if Chip and Joanna Gaines were familiar with that story and decided we want nothing to do with that. We want to have no opinions on gay people. We acknowledge they exist. We'll put them on our show, but we're not here promoting them. We're not here debasing them or anything like that. And I don't mind that as a business decision. I get it. I think conservatives are just looking for reasons to be mad. I will say some of this is their own damn fault, Chip and Joanna Gaines, because faith is part of their branding. But their faith right now has been hijacked by conservative extremists who want purity tests in the public eye. And if the Gaines are not going to speak out against that because they are bland, boring, unopinionated people, then you know what? If they're coming after you because you're not demonizing them, your response should be to celebrate gay people. Like, go after it. You don't just get to hide from this. You're in the public spotlight. Address it. And you don't just get to put your head in the sand and pretend there's nothing going on here. By not speaking out in support of LGBTQ people, yeah, I'm not surprised they're getting trashed for not being anti-gay enough. Like, including a gay couple on their show doesn't make them courageous. It makes them producers of a TV show. They're not endorsing marriage equality. They're just including a gay couple. And the fact that they're not even condemning the bigots, but just trying to, take down the temperature, I think that just shows their focus is growing their business, not promoting Christianity. And there's nothing wrong with that, but let's acknowledge that's what this is. They're not allies, but they're not enemies. They are people who think Christianity doesn't have to be political because for them, it's easier to pretend Christianity and religion is a virtue than actually understand that, sorry, no, if you're religious in this day and age, there's a political component to it too. And you got to take that in with it. You don't just get to be Christian and pretend it doesn't have any ramifications outside of your theology like that. So anyway, this new show, I don't know if it succeeds. I don't know if they do another season of it. If no one watches, it'll get canceled. That happens all the time. And it's not because of the right-wing backlash. It's because it's just a boring show. That's probably what'll happen. I did appreciate this take from New York magazines, The Cut, where they said, do these outraged fundamentalists even have HBO Max accounts that they can cancel in protest? Or are they just yelling for the sake of yelling? And if they must be up in arms over the content on that platform, they could at least direct their ire constructively. There are nearly 100 episodes of Entourage on there that need to be dealt with. So good luck to the Gaines and their show. But this is what you get if you're in the public eye and you're not going to defend marriage equality and speak out against bigots. They're going to come after you eventually. It always happens. All right, what questions we got here? Oh, look, Variety. These Christians hate that. You know they do. You know some of them are more upset that there are people of color on the show than a gay couple on the show. So sad that MAGA have forgotten what a remote control is. I love that comment, but this is the thing. They're not going to be watching this show. They're probably like me. You didn't even know this show existed until you heard about the controversy. Because again, if you're MAGA, you're only watching Fox News or whatever NASCAR's on or some shit like that. Like, I'm not even judging the NASCAR thing, but like, you're getting your mind broken by other channels. You weren't going to watch this in the first place. I don't think you get to be that mad when it comes to a show you're never going to watch in the first place. So this is all fake performative outrage. And none of those people, by the way, after Chip Gaines said his thing, none of them are like, well, okay, I guess we're good now. No one's happy. Wait, they thought HGTV was their propaganda? They think the Magnolia Network that Chip and Joanna Gaines operate, they think that should be an evangelical network because they think everything should be. These are the same people who think CNN is too liberal. They think PBS and NPR are liberal because anything that is on the surface neutral, Republicans and conservatives just assume that's propaganda for the left. They don't know how to exist in a world where you're either for them or you're absolutely against them. They don't understand that, no, there's a lot of content that doesn't have anything to do with this. They can't wrap their minds around that. The right has no room to complain about cancel culture, people being offended. Oh, you're so right. I mean, yeah, these people who are the first to complain that they're being canceled over something, and yet as soon as someone mildly puts a toe on the line, they're like, cancel them, boycott them, whatever. Yes, it's hypocrisy, but that's the only thing these people believe in. The rules don't apply to them. The rules are meant for everyone else to follow. That's how it works. All right, I'm jumping to a different story here. Give me one bit. Oh, I'm going to close so many tabs. Okay. I see a comment about Baylor. I will talk about Baylor soon. Let's talk about this story taking place in Canada. If some of you watch Seth Andrews, the Thinking Atheist channel, you may have seen that he just did a video on this. I found it disturbing as well. So right now, as we are taping this, this is happening in St. John's, which is the capital of Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's St. John's Pride. It's fantastic. It's going on for like 2 weeks. The theme is no going back. And so they're having their Pride Festival. Fantastic. They have a lot of things going on. Nothing wrong with that. I love it. On Sunday, July 20th, it's going to end. That's the last day. They're going to have a big Pride parade, followed by what's called Pride in the Park, which is where a bunch of vendors, food sellers, local nonprofits are going to set up their tents. And they're basically, you know how this works. They set up their tents. You, as a person who lives in the community, you can walk around, meet the different vendors, meet these people in your community, buy some stuff. It's all good. This happens all the time at these types of festivals. And the way they do it at this particular event is that if you want to set up a table or a tent or a booth at Pride in the Park, you have to register with them in advance so they could secure the space for you. And they do a nice thing where if you're a nonprofit organization, you get to do it for free, which is awesome. And so, like so many other allies of the LGBTQ community, there is an atheist group called Recovering from Religion. They're based in the US, but they have chapters in a lot of places. And basically, their whole shtick is if you have doubts about religion, we're going to help you walk through them. They actually have a online chat room and a phone line, I think, still, where you can call or talk to someone if you have religious doubts. That's awesome. But again, look at the name, Recovering from Religion. For a lot of people, they already are atheists in their minds, but then they don't know how to navigate the next steps. Because we talked about this earlier. If you're in a church community that is your entire life, if you no longer believe in God, what do you do? How do you proceed with your life after that? That's what Recovering from Religion helps you with. It takes you through the next steps. So that's what the organization does. And they have a guy who lives in St. John's who runs one of their chapters. So he filled out the form to set up a booth for Recovering from Religion at Pride in the Park as part of this parade. And I was able to get the email where he actually said, what did it say at the beginning? I'll find it later. But basically, in early June, June 2nd, he got an email from the organizers that said, cool, sounds great. You guys are approved. You can have a tent at Pride in the Park. And then on July 2nd, that Recovering from Religion representative, his name is Blake Collette, he got an email. Check this out. This is from the organizers 1 month after they said yes. July 2nd. Hello, Blake. Thanks for your interest as participating as a vendor in Pride in the Park. After thoughtful consideration and consultation with our board and broader community, we've decided to respectfully withdraw our approval for Recovering from Religion to participate in this year's event as a vendor. While we appreciate the important work you do, we did not find a strong alignment with the focus of Pride in the Park, particularly in regard to visible engagement with the LGBTQ community. Our event aims to center and celebrate this community, and we carefully consider how each vendor supports that mission. I read that email for such a long time because I was trying to figure out what the hell are they talking about? Like, you, even if you don't know recovering from religion, take a wild guess what their stance is on LGBTQ issues. They're awesome. You know why they're awesome? Because they know these issues, because they have members who are LGBTQ. Because why do you think people need to recover from religion? In a lot of cases, it's because of trauma that involves LGBTQ issues. So if you're looking for people who are allied with the mission of the St. John's Pride Festival, you don't need to look very far because this group is it. So, what are they talking about? Well, let me pull that up again. We did not find a strong alignment with the focus, particularly in regard to visible engagement. They do engagement. I'll show you this in a second, but like members of Recovering from Religion do outreach at these types of pride parades, pride festivals. Not outreach, like they're not recruiting. I mean, they set up tents. They are there because they want to be there for the people who need them. So I don't know what the hell that's all about. And here's the thing. So all of this is bizarre. None of this makes any sense for why the acceptance was rescinded. But so RFR, Recovering from Religion, they reached out back to organizers. Like an hour after they got that email, they responded and they're like, what? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. One of their directors wrote back and he said, basically, can I speak with organizers in order to clarify a few misconceptions about our organizations? Let me show you this email. This is what they sent the organizers shortly afterwards. And this is actually, I'm sorry, they sent an email like, what are you talking about? Didn't get a response. And then a couple days later, they sent this. Here we go. It's been a couple days and we haven't heard back from you. We understand with the event coming up, things are pretty busy at this time. We would appreciate a chance to have a discussion on our rejection to this event and an opportunity to clear up some misconceptions. If you can please send a response in the next 2 business days, that would be most appreciated. Without clarifying information for our board, we may have to take alternative steps to verify the validity of our exclusion. We appreciate your time and dedication to an inclusive and diverse outlook. So that's the letter Recovering from Religion sent to them. And by the way, that message that's right up there, we may have to take alternative steps to verify the validity of our exclusion. What they basically mean is don't make us write a formal letter to you trying to spell out like why we're upset, but we will. Like that's how I understood that sentence. And by the way, why do they need a response in the next 2 days? I'm filming this on a Thursday. The Pride in the Park event is on a Sunday. And if the group is going to be there, they need time to put together their material, things to hand out. You need to get organized for it. So they need a timely response before that event happens. So all of that made some sense to me anyway. So apparently saying I need a response in 2 days and saying we may have to take alternative steps to verify whatever the hell's going on, that pissed off the organizers of this Pride event even more. And this is where it gets kind of surprising. Check this out. This is the email that the organizers sent back to Recovering from Religion. I'm going to jump down here. We were disappointed by the ultimatum presented in your most recent message. We value open dialogue, but we believe this approach is not in the spirit of constructive community engagement. That said, we are committed to transparency and fairness, and we're happy to provide clarification regarding our decision. By the way, we're disappointed by the ultimatum. What ultimatum? You saw what I just showed you. That's what we're talking about here. Why 2 days? I think 2 days is a normal amount of time to get a response about something like this. And also this idea, like, respond to us or we'll take other steps. Yeah, what other options do you have? You would think LGBTQ people, of all people, would understand, like, if we're being discriminated against, you're going to, and maybe it's because of a miscommunication or something, misunderstanding, then we might have to talk to the media about it, because that's our only hope. Like, every LGBTQ organization, every atheist organization I know understands that that's kind of the next step. We don't want to deal with courts or anything, but also what you're doing is wrong. And we are going to tell people that what you're doing is wrong, but maybe this is just a misunderstanding and we just want to clarify. I think this is a pretty polite ultimatum that these people are pissed off about. But let's see what their response is. What's their clarification? All applicants are reviewed, blah, blah, blah. In the case of recovering from religion, we had significant concerns regarding your content and engagement strategies. These included a lack of direct and affirming representation of these individuals in your public materials and messaging that some of our community members, particularly those from queer and trans-led faith communities, found alienating and troubling. Okay, about that. If you have significant concerns about content and strategy, you gotta be specific. Which content did you not like? What did you find offensive? It's entirely possible that some social media person for recovering from religion may have posted something that turned out to be offensive, and that's not great. But also that can be explained, and that can be, you can apologize over that sort of thing. Fine, but I don't know what they're talking about because they don't specify. These included a lack of direct and affirming representation in your materials. Again, I am someone who has covered atheist groups for years. Very few people directly address the concerns in the atheist world. Very few groups address the concerns of LGBTQ people like recovering from religion does. Because why do you think people leave religion? A lot of times because they are gay or trans or bi or whatever, and they have been basically shunned by their religious communities. So this idea that it's not in your public material, one, it is, but two, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean they're against your those identities. And again, messaging that some of our faith communities found alienating. They're a group that helps people who have dealt with religious trauma. They're not saying all religion is bad. And by the way, recovering from religion is not one of those groups that's like, oh, you happen to be religious? Well, let's debate. I'm going to fight you on that. No, there are some atheists who might not like that people are religious and they think it's hypocritical to be gay and Christian or what have you. But we all know there are very affirming religious groups out there, Christian ones included. But recovering from religion is very much we will gladly work with religious allies when it comes to helping people with the issues they're facing. And more importantly, this idea that what's going to happen if they set up shop at this Pride in the Park event? What do you think they're going to do? That they're going to go to the queer and trans-led faith communities and pick a fight? No, they are there to just have their material available. They don't actively go and start debates with other people. So all of this shows a complete misunderstanding by the Pride Festival organizers as to what this atheist group does. None of it makes any sense. It's absolutely stupid. And then later on in that same email, look at this. We were disappointed by the tone and approach of your recent message, which included a time-sensitive demand and a suggestion of alternative steps to challenge our decision as queer people representing vulnerable communities. And as a volunteer board organizing a major community event, we found this escalation, including the swift involvement of your national body, deeply concerning. Unfortunately, this has reinforced some of our initial concerns about your organization's tactics and approach to engagement. Again, listen, man, I absolutely sympathize with LGBTQ people and the shit you have to go through. And I know you are marginalized and all of that. But when you're organizing any big event, certainly this being one of them, and an organization's like, you guys, we need a response because Sunday is the festival. We can't wait a month to get a response. So it absolutely makes sense to say, can you respond within like 48 hours? That seems reasonable. Unreasonable would be, hey, can you respond in the next 5 minutes or we're going to go to the news? No, that's an escalation. That's not what this is. And this idea that they took this alternative steps to be some sort of threat is ridiculous. I don't know who is running this organization like this, but man, even if it's all volunteers, these volunteers are very bad at what they do. You could say that. I can say that. So, like, look, no one is denying the need for a safe, inclusive space, especially for people who are marginalized. Totally. Absolutely, that should happen. But recovering from religion is the sort of group that understands that and actually creates those kinds of spaces for LGBTQ people. What is not affirming in their public material? What message do you think is alienating? Like just the fact that they say, hey, there are religious groups out there that can be traumatic. That seems accurate. And you know who would know that? A lot of LGBTQ people. So anyway, this idea that some religious communities might be offended by their presence, again, stupid. If you have a legitimate reason to think an atheist organization is going to pick fights with the religious groups that are going to be there, let's talk about that. But that's not what this group is doing. So I don't know what they're mad about. And again, as someone who is in atheist spaces and church-state separation battles, I know very well that sometimes you set aside your differences because you are working for a broader cause. It's the reason you will see American Atheists and the Freedom from Religion Foundation work with progressive religious organizations when it comes to lawsuits to take the 10 Commandments out of public schools. They will say, look, we disagree about theology, but we both agree, all of us agree, that you shouldn't force Christianity into public schools. Like, that's how they operate. I don't know what this group is doing. So, anyway, after they got that email, Daryl Ray, who is one of the leaders of this organization, Recovering from Religion, he decided to write a more formal letter, just basically saying, look, clearly you don't understand us. Let me try to explain to you what the hell is going on here. So look at this. Dear Eddie, who is one of the co-chairs of this group, this is Dr. Daryl Ray, president of the board for Recovering from Religion. I'm not going to read all of this, but look at this. We have several LGBTQ board members. Several of our director level people are LGBTQ. We have over 500 volunteers worldwide with around 20% or more identifying as LGBTQ. We create hundreds of hours of content with around a quarter being directly related to issues LGBTQ people face. Our resource library is full of curated help for LGBTQ people all over the world. And this goes on. He's just showing them, what are you talking about? This goes on for a while. He says a lot of interesting stuff. And then this, I don't know how we could be any more supportive. Additionally, in our 16 years of existence, we have tabled at many Pride events, maybe as many as 100 over the last 5 years. I personally have tabled at 2 this year. Just this year, we've tabled at Pride events in New Zealand, Australia, the UK, all over the US. I count about 15 events this year alone so far. You get the idea. This goes on for a while. In Daryl Ray's letter, he also points out they work with groups like the Trevor Project. They refer callers or people who message them to local LGBTQ resources. And at the Pride festivals they do attend, they politely interact with everyone around them. They are good neighbors. Their goal, I should point out, their goal is not to make people leave religion. It's to help people who have already left it. So, at the very end of his letter, Daryl Ray actually wondered, you could see this right here, from the correspondence, it seems that there is some religious test to be in your Pride event, or alternatively, there is some test that openly non-religious groups cannot attend for fearing or offending a religious group. Is this correct? Like, there's got to be a reason this Pride group is kicking them out. And if it's not based on stuff they've done, because clearly no one at this organization has looked at what recovering from religion is it because they're atheists? Like, come on, give us a reason or something. Guess what? Daryl Ray never heard back from them. They didn't respond to that letter. I will tell you this, after I heard about this, I sent an email to the organization as well. And I'm basically saying, look, I don't work for recovering from religion. but I've written about them for a long time. I've written about LGBTQ issues for a long time, and none of this makes any sense to me either. And I'm going to write about it. So, like, I did not say this, but I thought it. I'm like, you have 2 days to respond to me. They did not respond to me either. And I published an article about all this. But it sure as hell seemed that they wanted to privilege religious allies over secular groups, even though those secular groups are arguably more closely aligned with the lived experiences of many of their attendees. So here's where we stand right now. First, Recovering from Religion is not allowed to table at Pride in the Park this coming Sunday, July 20th, because organizers made up a reason for kicking out an explicitly non-theistic ally for reasons no one knows. Recovering from Religion says it will set up a table outside the festival grounds for anyone who's interested in learning about them, and I hope people visit their table. By the way, I did get one email from someone who works with Recovering from Religion, basically a testimonial, and this is what she said, part of it. RFR never tries to convert people or push an agenda. We simply listen. I'll show you this right here. We simply listen. We hold space for people to ask questions, unpack years of religious conditioning, and heal. And for many queer people, that healing includes reclaiming and embracing who they are after being told their identity is sinful or wrong. It is deeply saddening to hear that St. John's Pride removed RFR based on a mischaracterization of our work. The idea that we lack affirming representation is simply untrue. I am that representation. I'm proud to stand with this organization because I know firsthand the life-changing support it offers. It's a beautiful post right there, beautiful email that they did send to the organization. So I will add a couple things to this because this all happened. I posted an article about this earlier this week. And as soon as I posted my article, guess who calls me? The organizers of this festival. Finally, I guess they saw the article, even if they didn't want to respond to my email. But first of all, they were very unhappy with everything I just told you, which is what I wrote. They were very unhappy with how they were characterized. And I'm like, that's cute. Tell me why you kicked out these allies, because nothing you're saying makes any sense. What have they done that's so damn offensive? And I'm paraphrasing, but they basically said, we don't feel like discussing this with you. And I'm like, all right, I mean, you don't have to, you don't owe me anything, but also, I mean, you guys are very bad at your jobs. I don't think I said that. I definitely thought that. But I'm like, you don't have to tell me, but you should definitely make it public. And you should tell somebody. You should tell Recovering from Religion what they did that's so wrong. Because just saying, like, we have our reasons, but we're not going to tell you what they are. I mean, that makes you petty and shitty at your jobs. Your volunteer jobs. What is wrong with you? Like, responsible organizers would have a better response than what I was getting. And then around the same time they called me, it turns out one of their organizers was on a local radio station because the local radio station wanted to know what the hell was going on. And I'm not going to play this for you because it was like 5 minutes long. It was like 4 minutes long. But the organizer did tell the radio host, even if they weren't going to tell me, what was wrong. And this is what he said. This is a direct quote. Just no connection to our local community. People weren't sure what their motive was. There's always a concern that queer people are tokenized in these kinds of groups and these kinds of movements. So purely out of an abundance of caution, we had reached out to them and said, you know what? We looked into this deeper. We don't have an established relationship with you folks. And that's why. And they did not like that response. And there was an escalation protocol that got launched. City councilors were contacted for comment on this, which, why? We don't understand. They got very aggressive, demanding to see our internal policies. And we were given timelines of when we had to respond or things are being escalated. Oh my God, Crimea River. It really speaks to an entitlement to access to our community that some groups have. The big thing is They're not a part of our community and they don't have a connection to our community, but there is this sense of entitlement that they should have access to our community. I've never seen organizers of a pride festival get mad when allies come to them and say, we want to be a part of this thing you're doing because we also support LGBTQ people. And to watch the organizers say, I'm sorry, only our friends are invited here. This thing that I think the city is sponsoring, by the way, that's why you reach out to the city councilors. This idea that, I'm sorry, you want access to gay people at a pride fest? How could you? Like, come on. Utterly, utterly stupid by these organizers. They had an open registration on the Pride Festival's website for anyone who wanted to table. It didn't say, oh, by the way, the prerequisite is you have to know one of us personally. Do all the food vendors know every single person at this running this thing? By the way, this idea that queer people are tokenized by RFR. What the hell is that all about? No, they're not tokenized. They are part of the community, and RFR wanted to be a part of this as well. These are allies. If you are pushing away good allies, you are going to have very few people able to stand up for you when you need it. And by the way, to their credit, Recovering from Religion, Blake Collette, the guy who's in that area, every time I've seen him do interviews about this, he's repeatedly said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he's like, I'm not looking for a fight. If they just say, hey, look, sorry about all that, come back, have your table, glad you're here. He's like, that would be great. I'm not looking to start a fight. He wants to be a part of this community. And the LGBTQ festival organizers are the ones that have some sort of litmus test for which allies are good allies or something like that. And they're not doing it because they spoke to the organization. It's because they have a complete misunderstanding of the group. It makes no sense. By the way, I'm not telling anybody to boycott their event or not attend. You should attend. You should go. But also, I think I can also hold the belief that the people organizing it are just completely incompetent and they don't know what they're doing. And the way they are handling this is completely irresponsible. And people should let them know that because they're being dumb. And I wish them all the best. All right, I'll stop there. This has made me so mad. Butthurt preacher on the board? I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. I'm going to skip to the next one. Is this discrimination? I don't think it is. And Recovering from Religion is not going to get any legal involvement here or anything like that. I don't think it's discrimination. I think it's just incompetence. Like, the people running this organization have no clue what they're doing. So they made a dumb decision. And instead of just saying, yeah, we made a mistake, now they're doubling down on it by making up even dumber reasons for why they kicked out RFR. It's not discrimination. I know what discrimination can be. This isn't that. This is just bad organizers doing a dumb thing. And no one in their circles, apparently, is willing to tell them, hey, you guys, we're being dumb. Ultimatum, your own schedule that I'm trying to abide by. Yeah, again, if you're running a festival, literally, this is the time when you respond to emails. Like, I promise you, if the email said, hi, I'm from the media and I want to write an article about the Pride Festival, can I talk to an organizer within the next day or two? I promise you, the organizers of this would respond immediately and say, of course we're available, as they should be. But as soon as one of their own people is coming to them and saying, can you explain to me why you made this dumb move that affects us and our community? They're like, I'm sorry, we don't respond to emails the week of the festival. Like, when else do you? I promise you, in August, you're not going to be getting any emails about Pride Fest. Very few. But now is the time you have to do shit for the festival. Come on. Didn't they say they wanted open dialogue earlier? Yeah, I mean, if you go to the Pride Festival's website, too, everything on their website is all about how they want everyone to come there. I mean, look back at this website. Look at this. Look at this. things that are on here. No going back. Join us in the streets in celebration, in solidarity. No going back. I would also say, look at the festival. Become a vendor. I know it's too late. You can't register anymore, but they have an open registration right here for people who want to participate. Join us. They're literally asking people to register with them. And as soon as a group says, we would like to do that, we support you, they're like, you don't support us the way we prefer to be supported. And by the way, we're not telling you what that means, because here in this secret cabal of ours, does RFR do community work generally in the city? That's the only thing I can think of. I believe I've seen Recovering from Religion do like volunteer events in the past, but I don't know that they have a big footprint in St. John's, because right now it's like one guy launching this chapter of the organization. It is possible they're relatively new, so they don't have a footprint there. But that's precisely why you want to be a part of an event like this, so you can meet people who also realize, oh my God, I'm no longer religious either. I want to be involved in your organization, in this community, because I don't know what the local issues regarding atheism in St. John's are, but they do. Like, this is how you build both organizations. I wonder if they turned away the hot dog vendor for being too straight. I mean, I get the joke. I mean, this is the question. There's no way every vendor, every organization that's going to have a booth there is as openly pro-LGBTQ as Recovering from Religion is. Like, again, hot dog vendor is like, I would like to sell my goods to your audience. Yeah, fine. We would like to have you there. That totally makes sense to me. But what? These allies of the community are not allowed because they're doing it the wrong way, which they won't explain? I don't get it. Are you planning to do more Everything Wrong with Bible videos? I binge watch them and they're brilliant. Thank you so much for watching those. Those are video series where I went through every chapter in the first 5 books of the Bible. I will say right now there are no plans on my end to do any more of them, just because fewer and fewer people watched it as I got through book 5. And they took up so much time on my part to write it and put it all together. So unless I do some sort of Kickstarter later on and people actually are interested, I think I'll move on to doing other things. But hey, as I think I've said this, you are welcome to take the format and run with it. I wish other people would do it. Oh, dang, I forgot. I have bread rising. You are too interesting. I'm glad I have burned your house down. And send me the bread. Banana bread is excellent. Keep it coming. Oh, thank you for that donation, Sean. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to jump to a different story. Let me pull it up here. All right. I'm going to try not to run too late, but there's a couple more big ones here I want to get through. Okay. This story is fascinating to me. Baylor University is based in Waco, Texas. It's a private Christian university. It's a Baptist school. It's the largest Baptist university in the world. And if you aren't familiar with Baylor, but you're a sports fan, you're probably familiar with their women's basketball team. Like, they have occasionally really good sports ball teams. But the reason I bring them up this time is because they recently put out a press release earlier this month. Check this out. This is from Baylor. They put out this press release on June 30th. Here we go. Look at this beginning. The Center for Church and Community Impact, this is a building that's on their campus, has been awarded a $643,401 grant from the Eula May and John Bow Foundation to foster inclusion and belonging in the church. Through academic research, this grant will help us better understand the disenfranchisement and exclusion of LGBTQIA+ individuals and women within congregations to nurture institutional courage and foster change. So this is fascinating. Let's talk about a couple elements of this and then we'll go on. At a lot of universities, if you're a researcher, you're a professor at the school, you want to do a big study, you need money to do it. You'll fill out a lot of grant proposals. I have done this and I'm not even a professor, but you fill out the grant proposals, you send it in to the groups that have money that might be interested in funding this thing. And at Baylor, these researchers said, you know what would be very interesting because we're a Baptist university? Let's talk about why so many LGBTQ people and women feel marginalized in our churches. And let's study that. Like, don't just do it anecdotally, but let's see if we could research it and give churches the tools they need so that they can make sure they're not disenfranchising, they're not making women and LGBTQ people feel really shitty. Now, maybe you're thinking my initial thought, which is, hey, maybe it has something to do with your shitty beliefs about how women should be submissive and trans people don't exist and being gay is a sin. Maybe that's kind of the reason. I'll take $500,000 and I will just tell you that to your face. But they're doing rigorous studies on this because, and this is where I think they're going with it, it's not that they want to change those beliefs. They want to figure out if there's a way to still show gay people that they matter, even if they think homosexual acts are a sin. Is there a way to bring them into the fold so that they can reconcile that? Now, on one side, I'm like, no, because your beliefs are the problem. But on the other side, I've seen this many times where churches say, yes, these are our core beliefs, but we do want to be welcoming to people who feel like there's no place for them in our church. I have both of those feelings on this, but I do understand why an academic who works at Baylor would say, we want to study this for real. Give us the tools, the money we need to do it the right way so we can produce resources for churches to say we can help those people. And we can do it a lot better than than what it is right now, where a lot of churches are just jerks to those communities. Okay, that's what they were trying to do. And at Baylor, they got the money to do it, almost $650,000, which is a lot of money for this. Okay. I just want to reiterate, nothing about this study would change the beliefs of Baptists, conservative Baptists, their belief that same-sex relationships are sinful, that marriage equality is bad, that homosexuality is a sin, all that. They are not changing those beliefs. No one was asking that. And I would also point out that while Southern Baptists are notoriously anti-LGBTQ and anti-women, there are a lot of progressive Baptist denominations too, and they support church-state separation, and they support women's rights, and they support LGBTQ rights. So, like, Baptists are a very broad bunch there, okay? And this research is helping all of those people, whoever wants it, reach out to those people properly. And they actually said the way they were going to use this money, they want to recruit students to interview, and they want to create trauma-sensitive training resources that the Baylor researchers can develop for churches to use. Okay, my point is, nothing about this is controversial in academia. Nothing about this is controversial at Baylor. This is something they do all the time. This is something their professors do all the time. And you would assume that the people applying for a grant of this size at Baylor would totally understand what the minefields are. When they announced that grant, this is what one professor said on social media. Grateful for this grant that will help us love better. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're trying to do with this money, create resources to help people. This guy was very enthusiastic about it. And I will also point out the organization that donated this money to the researchers, they said, yeah, this is what we do here. They said, we have worked with Baylor for well over 40 years, that they funded a similar project through Baylor's School of Social Work for the past 3 years. And they said it has yielded significant insights. So like they've done this before. They have a track record of success, not just the funding organization, but the Baylor researchers at using that money the way it's meant to be used. So it was a win-win for everybody. And then conservative Christians got mad. Check this out. This is from one person who is like a notorious critic of all things progressive, Megan Basham. So now that the Progressive Bow Foundation has granted Baylor nearly $750,000, it's $640, it's not $750, to promote LGBTQ inclusivity. That's not what the study was. It's worth looking at why Baylor would take this step, sure to anger many Christian families who send their kids to school there. Fact is, they made themselves beholden to this left-wing org long ago. Like, all of this is bullshit. I want to reiterate, they were not promoting LGBTQ inclusivity. In fact, I would argue that if churches are trying to be non-assholes to LGBTQ people and women, when their underlying beliefs are still anti-LGBTQ, I actually find that deceptive. So I don't actually think this is about inclusivity. It's about saying, how can we make sure they don't see us as assholes? And a lot of them have religious trauma from things, we have said to them. How can we make sure we're sending the message we want to send to those people? It's not inclusivity that they're after. You get my point? They just want new members. That's what this is ultimately about. So what this person is saying makes absolutely no sense, but she wasn't alone. This is a theological seminary professor. Look at this one. This is illuminating and sad and not at all surprising. Baylor has been moving away from Christian faithfulness for decades now, but it's still sad to watch another nail in the coffin of a once great Christian university. This is the way right-wingers always talk. Like, every college always used to be great, but then they got woke. They all talk this way. It's a weird sort of rhetoric that they're using here. I like this one from another right-wing pastor. It is much better to send your child to a secular university, hostile to the faith, than to a Christian university like Baylor. Better the wolf with bared fangs than the wolf disguised as a shepherd. Yeah, right, because Baylor's really faking it with the whole Christian thing. Then there was Allie Beth Stuckey, who's a right-wing commentator as well, who she didn't just put out a tweet. She put out a whole friggin' thread. Baylor University took this money to push LGBTQ plus affirmation in churches. It's not affirmation. Then returned it. We'll get back to that. But is this repentance or damage control? A look at the university's moves in recent years reveals the truth. Like, these people will not rest about any of this. I want to point out one other thing. There is a Baptist General Convention of Texas, and the executive director, who's, you would think, has a relationship with every Baptist university in the state. Look at this. This is what he sent out in an email. This week, there has been much chatter regarding an announcement made about a grant given to Baylor for the study of women and LGBTQ inclusion in churches. This has raised concerns and questions. And then he points out, I just want you all to know, in contrast with the universities that are affiliated with us, our relationship with Baylor University is by special agreement. Like, you guys, we have nothing to do with this. Don't be mad at me. I hate gay people. That's how we work here at the Baptist Club. They're just distancing themselves as much as they can. In case you are wondering about Baylor University's actual stance, this is what they have published on their website. Statement on human sexuality. And look at what they say here. They affirm purity in singleness and fidelity in marriage between a man and a woman as the biblical norm. And temptations to deviate include both heterosexual sex outside of marriage and homosexual behavior. If you have same-sex sex in a loving relationship, that's bad. And look at this last line. Oh my God. It is thus expected that Baylor students will not participate in advocacy groups which promote understandings of sexuality that are contrary to biblical teaching. You can't even join an LGBTQ group on campus at Baylor that says nice things about gay people, creates community for them. Because if they think it's advocacy, they're not even allowing it. So Baylor is by no means a safe space for LGBTQ people. And that's why I'm going back to what was this grant for? It's to study how they can still come off as welcoming to LGBTQ people and women, even though on paper, as I just showed you, they're totally against both of those types of groups. Okay. So, I mean, by the way, I hear this question a lot. If you're a professor, why would you even work at a school like this? They all have reasons for why they go there. Maybe Baylor's the place you can get your research funded, like the one we're talking about now. Everyone has their reasons for being there. But the point is, I don't think it's hypocritical for an anti-LGBTQ university to study the harm that churches can inflict upon LGBTQ people. I don't think that's hypocritical. I think that's par for the course. I think any decent university would see all this backlash and stand its ground and say studying the issue is not the same as affirming same-sex whatever. I mean, and also they could say, by the way, this research is being done by our professors who are the best of the best. Like, defend your own people. That is not what they did. What did Baylor actually do? They put out this statement about a week ago, addressing recent external research grant. And this is from Dr. Linda Livingstone, who is the chancellor. What is she? She's the president, Linda Livingstone. Dean John Singletary and principal investigator Dr. Gaynor Yancey have voluntarily offered to rescind their acceptance of this grant on behalf of the School of Social Work and return all associated funds to the granting foundation. Yeah, the two researchers said, hey, you know what? We'll take it back. You can have the money back. We're not going to do this anymore. Like, did they voluntarily offer to give back the money, or did the school strong arm them and force them to give them back the money? And then they say, what else? As we reviewed the details and process surrounding this grant, our concerns did not center on the research itself, but rather on the activities that followed as part of the grant. Specifically, the work extended into advocacy for perspectives on human sexuality that are inconsistent with our bigotry. Please be assured that we're still bigots. Okay. You mean to tell me that two professors at Baylor, you think they secretly were trying to advocate for this stuff, and they got a grant for this much money from a group that, didn't know where Baylor stands on the issues? Like, there's no way Baylor was advocating same-sex relationships, that women should be in leadership in churches, etc. They're not advocating for it. The grant requesters knew that. The grant givers knew that. The only people who seem to be surprised by any of this are the Baylor administrators, who are like, quick, we got to make a reason for why this grant can't be taken. And they made up a stupid reason. So this is the excuse. Baylor said, we would rather give you back $650,000 because doing this research might make people think we like gay people. And their letter basically says, we're so sorry we allowed our professors to get this much money. It'll never happen again. By the way, keep giving us your donations and don't be mad at us. Utterly stupid. And guess what? It didn't appease the critics. One of those people I showed you earlier, Megan Basham, here's what she said after that letter. Let me explain in this thread why it is not enough for Baylor to simply return that grant, because the grant money is emblematic of rot that has been going on for a long time. Major Christian donors should not allow the school to move on from this without a full house cleaning. And then she goes on and says a bunch of bullshit for a long time. Of course, these people are not satisfied. They found a culture war issue that they can get on top of. Baylor should have known. I never get this with all those Ivy League schools when, like, Elise Stefanik was questioning them about anti-Semitism, there is nothing you can say that's going to appease Republicans. So stand your ground and defend your school and defend the protesters. Like, why are you caving in and saying, oh, yeah, there is anti-Semitism? No, there isn't. And in this case, too, like, why isn't Baylor saying we defend our professors and the academic integrity of what they were trying to study? Because they're never going to appease these people whose only claim to fame is saying everyone who follows me understands that everyone else is too woke. They're never going to be like, okay, Baylor, you did good. Utterly stupid that Baylor doesn't realize that's going to happen. The most interesting response came from the grant giving organization, which I found really interesting too. Check this out right here. Here we go. This is from the Bow Foundation, and they say a couple things that I found really surprising here. Look at this. This is after Baylor said we're not taking the money. Every member of our board of trustees went to Baylor. They matriculated there. And our family has been funding work at the institution for well over 40 years. We don't ask for these grants. You guys come to us to answer open research questions or to meet campus needs. And look at this one. This was an opportunity to answer the Christian call to care for the marginalized by creating resources and providing important research for faith communities. Our hearts break for the professors, research fellows, and especially the students who will receive this message from Baylor loud and clear. And this is interesting. Our foundation is rooted in Baptist distinctives that include church autonomy and the priesthood of every believer. Not all Baptist believers or churches are aligned on every interpretation of Scripture concerning women or LGBTQIA plus individuals, but churches need evidence-based research. The purpose of this research was not to dictate theology, but to better understand the disenfranchisement that those individuals and women often face. Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm saying. Research is not bad. And if someone's going to give you money to do the research into a thing that people associate with Baptists, the bigotry, and you're saying, is there a way we can stop people from thinking we are bigots, especially when we're going in with good intentions and we want to help them, but they want nothing to do with us because they think we hate them, because you do. Is there a way to change that? I get why they would want to research that, and better to research it than just listen to some random pastor rant for like an hour about it. Like, my heart goes out to the funding organization, because they've invested a lot of money into doing this sort of research. I have a soft spot for academic research because it's so hard to get funding for anything. And here's this organization that says, we all went to Baylor. We've given so much money to Baylor to do this type of research, and now you're turning your backs on us? Because why? Because some right-wing bigots whose job is fueling these culture war fires got mad? Like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. So the bottom line is that the critics do not want to understand LGBTQ people and women because they fear this study might generate empathy for people they've written off, and they don't like research because it may contradict their predisposed hatred of outsiders. They love ignorance because typically people who get a formal education tend to oppose a lot of the talking points they spew. So look, I hope this foundation, with $650,000 burning a hole in their pockets, I hope they find a different university to do this study, because it's important to do any type of study for this stuff. They can do it at a Christian school. They can do it at a public university. They need the money even more. I also appreciated this last part that they said right here. Let me show you this at the bottom. This decision disserves Baylor students, faculty, and the broader Christian community. Baylor has a duty to protect and uphold the integrity of scientific inquiry, allowing its world-class faculty to investigate complex issues without fear of reprisal based on shifting political winds. Pulling the rug out from under its faculty after those researchers have already put the grueling work into securing funding work they undertook with Baylor's full knowledge and approval is a chilling affront to the very concept of academic freedom. By the way, you may have already seen this in the news, like with all the cuts from Elon Musk and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they're cutting scientific research that is done by a lot of these universities. Now here's a private foundation giving money to do academic research, and the school is saying, we don't want your money. It is unbelievable how many anti-education people are just decimating the research world right now. So again, good for this organization. I hope they find other people to do this. And if you're a professor who is thinking about working at Baylor, you should remember, hey, guess what? Baylor's not going to support you in this if you're trying to do research. Baylor's more than, by the way, that letter sent by the foundation, that's what the school should have put out when they said, yeah, we're keeping this money, we're doing this research, and screw you to all the right-wing haters who don't understand how academia works. Why did the foundation have to put out that letter? That should have been what Linda Livingstone put out. If you're a student who wants to learn, like maybe you thought Baylor was a good school for you, they're showing you it's not worth it. If you're a professor who wants to do research, even if you are a religious professor who wants to do research, Baylor's not going to have your back. Like I'm sure there are other schools, including Christian ones, that would love to have access to that kind of money and the kind of professors that do this work. And schools that are not going to fall apart if someone writes a mean tweet at them. So very frustrating, very stupid, even though for what it's worth, I don't even necessarily think this was the best type of research to do, because I could answer the question for you without the research, but I don't get what they're doing. All right, what questions we got here? I actually have my Master of Divinity degree from the seminary at Baylor. When I went there, it was more progressive than it is now. I'm not surprised by that at all. And, you know, there are a lot of, I got my master's degree from a school that is ostensibly religious. Why? Because when you're studying math, I promise you religion played no role in what I did. It was a good school. I got the degree I needed. We shook hands. We parted ways. That's how it should be. But that's the thing. These schools can be really good, especially if what you are studying is the thing they specialize in. Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, a lot of these Christian schools, they now have to deal with criticism from people who don't think they're sufficiently religious, and then they go more extreme and more extreme. Finding better ways. What does this say? Finding a better ways to recruit new members since our membership is declining. What are we talking about? I'm not sure anyway. Sorry about that. Let's skip to the next one. This hurts my brain. They may want to study it, but I'm not buying they're doing it for benevolent reasons. That's where I was basically going with it too. You know, I've worked with organizations that fund research into atheists. Like I was there with them while they were working with these researchers. And basically the way this works is they said, look, we have a pool of money. We are open to you studying how atheism is spread. What helps it spread? What are the obstacles to atheism in different parts of the world? It's kind of like what this organization is doing, but with the focus on religion and atheism in general. And that means a lot of academics wrote long grants saying, I want to study this. I need this much money to make it happen. And this is what I want to do. And no one else would fund something like this. And it's unbelievable the sort of papers that resulted as a result of getting that money and having that funding available. Like, I really value those organizations committed to funding academic research. It's really important. The idea that a university would say, no, we're giving it back to you because some right-wing bloggers said mean things about it. It's very stupid from an academic perspective. Religious institutions still shooting themselves in the foot and wondering why they're hurting. Yeah, and I don't even know if we're talking about Baptist churches in general or Baylor at this point, but like Baptist churches are like, why don't gay people like us? Why do women think we're, why do they think we're misogynist? It's like, have you looked at what's preached at your churches? Meanwhile, Baylor's like, we're a top institution. We are a very academic, studious Baptist university. Hey, why are all the researchers no longer wanting to work here? Oh, thank you for that donation. Apropos of nothing, lifted 75 pews back into their spots in the sanctuary. I didn't burst into flames for some reason. I guess I'm not the devil. It's really weird working in and around the church. Yeah, I am wondering what you were doing in that sanctuary too. But yes, it turns out holding a Bible, touching a pew, moving it around, it doesn't, nothing happens. It's fine. You're just helping people out. All right, jumping to a different story. Give me 1 second here. I have 2 more that I want to do, and then I will be done. I know it's running a little late tonight. Go away, millions of tabs. Okay. All right. I got 2 more stories, and they both involve Texas. So, Texas families represented by a coalition of church-state separation groups, they just filed a federal lawsuit against a Texas law that would put the 10 Commandments, King James version only, in every classroom. And I know we talked about this a few weeks ago, but basically, Texas recently passed a bill appropriately titled Senate Bill 10. And there was a lot of opposition to it, but the bill basically says you got to put the 10 Commandments up in every single classroom. It also includes a provision that says the Attorney General has to defend any district that gets sued over this. And if they lose the case, the taxpayers will pay the money for it. And they tried it a couple years ago. It didn't work, but it worked this time around. I will tell you, Louisiana has already passed an identical law. They did it last year, but a federal judge struck it down as unconstitutional. And recently, an appellate court upheld that decision to say it's unconstitutional. Arkansas passed its own version of the bill last month, or maybe 2 months ago. They've already been sued over it. Texas would be the largest and most influential state to pass this bill, and now they are getting sued over it. So basically, this is what I want to show you. This is the lawsuit, and it's brought about by 16 different families, and they're represented by Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the ACLU of Texas, the ACLU National, and the Freedom from Religion Foundation. These are the same groups, by the way, church-state separation groups, that filed the Louisiana lawsuit and the Arkansas one. So, like, that group has the 10 Commandments thing down at this point. Also interesting, look at who these families are suing, because this is a list of all the families, but they're going after the school districts. They're not going after like Greg Abbott or the Attorney General or anything like that. They're not going after Ken Paxton. They're going after the school districts. And it basically says in this lawsuit that the families say we should not be force-fed your version of Christianity because it's harmful. It's not what we believe. It also mentions, and this is, I found this fascinating. Do you remember the Supreme Court recently issued a decision in a case called Mahmoud v. Taylor? And this was a decision that allows religious families to opt out from basically anything in the curriculum that they feel goes against their religion. So if your kids are reading a book in school that has a gay character in it, then the Supreme Court said, yeah, your family can say, little Bobby, we're pulling him out of class that day. And if enough students do that, depending on the book or something, you just either can't teach the book or the teacher can't do that lesson. It's ridiculous. But this lawsuit says, hey, remember that Supreme Court case that they just decided a few weeks ago? Well, that case says you can opt your kids out from public school lessons that contradict your religious beliefs. Well, that gives us the right to remove kids from the classroom if these 10 commandments are being shoved in their faces. And we want to pull our kids if that's the case. Like, what they say is permanently posting the 10 commandments in every classroom, rendering them unavoidable, is plainly unconstitutional. I'll zoom here so you can see this. The displays will pressure students, including the minor child plaintiffs, into religious observance, veneration, and adoption of the state's favored religious scripture. And the displays at the bottom here, will substantially interfere with and burden the right of the parents who are Jewish, Christian, Unitarian, Universalist, Hindu, or non-religious to direct their children's education and upbringing when it comes to religious questions and matters. So these parents are saying this is blatantly unconstitutional what you're doing. And in the lawsuit, one thing I liked, they have receipts. They quote so many Texas lawmakers who very clearly said in public they were voting for this bill because they wanted to shove Christianity in kids' faces. Specifically, they quote Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who said that this law meant that students, quote, in every classroom in Texas, they are going to see the 10 Commandments and they are going to know about God. And they quote the sponsor of this bill, Senator Phil King, who said, we want every kid pre-K through 12 every day in every classroom they sit in to look on the wall and read those words that God says, because we want them to understand how important that those statements of God, those rules of God, are, that they see them in their classroom every single day of their public education. Why would you say that unless you wanted to convert those kids? I also enjoyed, this is from the press release all those groups sent out. Look at the quotations they got from the parents themselves. Allison Fitzpatrick says, we are non-religious and don't follow the explicitly religious commandments, such as remember the Sabbath. Every day that the posters are up in classrooms will signal to my children that they are violating school rules. Here's another one. I am deeply concerned that SB 10 will impose another faith scriptures on students for nearly every hour of the school day. This is from a rabbi. While our Jewish faith treats the 10 Commandments as sacred, the version mandated under this law does not match the text followed by our family, and the school displays will conflict with the religious beliefs and values we seek to instill in our child. They're using the religious arguments that evangelicals use when they want to discriminate against gay people. This rabbi is saying, excuse me, I have the religious right to raise my child under my religious beliefs, and these heathens are imposing their religion on me. It's the argument that Christians use when they oppose like comprehensive sex education. You're teaching my kids values that they don't hold, so you can't teach it, and my kid doesn't have to take it. And now this rabbi is saying, those 10 Commandments are not the version we use, so you're violating our faith. I love it. Here's another one I liked. This is from a Hindu person. SB 10 imposes a specific rules-based set of norms that is at odds with my Hindu faith. Displaying the 10 Commandments in my kids' classroom sends the message that certain aspects of Hinduism, like believing in multiple paths to God, or venerating murtis as the living, breathing, physical representations of gods, so polytheism and worshiping idols, venerating idols, are wrong. Public schools in the state of Texas have no place pushing their preferred religious beliefs on my children, let alone denigrating my faith, which is about as un-American and un-Texan as one can be. I do take issue with the un-Texan. Denigrating other religions is very much a Texan thing, but point taken. So you have a big variety of families here that are jumping on this, saying the 10 Commandments are going against my religious beliefs or non-religious beliefs, and they're all citing Supreme Court cases meant to give Christian zealots veto power over like anti-discrimination laws and things like that. Also interesting, if this case, whatever a judge says about this case, if it ends up in front of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, that is a notoriously conservative court, but that's the exact same court that has already upheld the unconstitutionality of Louisiana's 10 Commandments law. So it's very likely this one should get struck down as well. Much like the Arkansas lawsuit, this one notes that a Supreme Court case from like 50 years ago, Stone versus Graham, it already declared a virtually identical law in Kentucky to be unconstitutional. And this lawsuit says that case has not been overturned. That decision has not been overturned. And what Texas did is exactly like what they did in Kentucky. So if the Supreme Court already said it's unconstitutional, then this law is unconstitutional. So it says in the ruling in Louisiana's case, the judge said at the time, this court remains bound to follow Stone, the old decision, until the Supreme Court overrules it. Another thing that is in this lawsuit is they say that in Louisiana and in the Stone case, both of which have been declared unconstitutional, the Ten Commandments were required to have what was called a context statement, basically a disclaimer that says this is historical. It's not about religion. Guess what? In Texas, the law doesn't even require that. So this one is even more egregious than the laws that have already been declared unconstitutional. I mean, the fact is that by mandating the Ten Commandments in every classroom, the state is telling kids which religion counts and which ones don't. And they are sending a message that kids from non-Christian families or the wrong kind of Christian families are second-class citizens. And so this lawsuit says Texas has violated the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, the Free Exercise Clause, and importantly, they're saying, look, we know it's going to take you a while to rule on this, so we are asking you to jump in right now and just issue a preliminary injunction. Put a stop to this law because guess what? School's going to start in like a few weeks. So we need the courts to step in and stop this law now, for now, temporarily, until you actually issue a formal decision. I should tell you that this is the second lawsuit against the Texas law. The first one was filed by a group called the Next Generation Action Network Legal Advocacy Fund. But look, while some legal cases depend on how a judge interprets the facts, this one is about as clear-cut as they come. Texas passed an illegal law, made up details about American history to defend their position, then bragged about their true intentions along the way. Like any judge should be able to admit all that while they are striking down this law before any school has to decide how to promote Christianity in the classroom. All right, I'll stop there for a bit. What questions we got here? I'm glad these lawsuits are being filed, but I'm worried what will happen if it gets up to the Supreme Court. So I've thought about this a little bit. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but when you have cases that are this over the top in shoving Christianity in everyone's faces, even this Supreme Court doesn't seem to like those cases. Like they can't even say, it only affects one person. It's a religious freedom thing. This is very much like you guys picked a bad law, shoving not just the Ten Commandments in the classroom, but shoving a particular version of it, not even pretending it's about history. Like these are not good cases for them to, you're making it really hard for like Neil Gorsuch to come up with a rational explanation for why this is okay. So for now, I'm not really worried about the Supreme Court just yet when it comes to this stuff. But I mean, if the Supreme Court says this is okay, at that point, church-state separation doesn't even exist anymore. So everything else would have gotten much worse too. You only need one commandment in classrooms. Thou shalt not lie to children. I mean, you only need like that one commandment period. But I think a lot of Christians would object to that one. Lying to kids is like kind of the whole foundation of all churches, isn't it? All right, I got one more story for you. I'll try to make it quick. I know we're running late. Thank you for sticking around. Okay. This is also in Texas, and it involves a lawsuit. But this goes back to a lawsuit that was filed last November by the Center for Inquiry. And basically, what they were looking at is this part of Texas law. Check this out. Who can perform a wedding ceremony in the state of Texas? And look what it says. The following persons are authorized to conduct a marriage ceremony. If you're a licensed or ordained Christian minister or priest, that's fine. If you're a Jewish rabbi, that's fine. If you're the officer of a religious organization and that organization says you can perform a ceremony, that's fine. Or if you're a judge, who is not on this list? This actually means that if you are, let's say, a humanist celebrant or a secular celebrant, and you are non-religious and you are trained to do something like this, it doesn't matter necessarily because you don't fall under one of these designations unless you declare yourself religious. And I think the humanist society, they say they are religious, so they get a pass. But secular celebrants under Center for Inquiry, they're a non-religious organization. So they say we're not allowed to perform ceremonies even though we train our people. You know who could perform a wedding? If you are one of those people that's like, I want my buddy to perform the wedding ceremony for me and my spouse, but they're not a priest. So what can they do? Well, you know how there are some websites online where you could pay a few bucks, get your really quick ordination in like 5 minutes by filling out some paperwork and paying some money. And literally the only reason you do that is so that church, like, what is it called? It's been a while since I've thought of it, but like the Universal Life Church or whatever they call it, they will say, yep, we ordain you and you could perform a wedding ceremony. That person would be allowed to perform a ceremony in Texas, but a secular celebrant would not be allowed to do it. So the Center for Inquiry, they decided to file a lawsuit over this. And what they said, I mean, I happen to agree with their premise. There's no good reason to deny secular celebrants the opportunity to perform wedding ceremonies, especially when the only people who would be allowed to do it are people who have gone through their training, right? So last year, this lawsuit was filed. You could see it right here. It was filed by the Center for Inquiry and their plaintiff, Eric McCutcheon. This is filed in a federal court in the District of Texas, and they filed it against the clerk of Tarrant County and the district attorney of Tarrant County. Basically, what this lawsuit said is that Eric McCutcheon has been a secular celebrant trained by the Center for Inquiry since 2014. It said he wishes to conduct marriage ceremonies for those seeking a non-religious marriage ceremony in Texas, but due to the state's laws, he cannot legally perform this service. And if he does, he could be charged with a crime because that's what the law says. It says you have to be in these categories to perform the wedding, otherwise you can't do it. So he would be committing a crime if he did it. And CFI said that the Tarrant County clerk has not and will not record licenses returned by secular celebrants. Like, she is the person who could file criminal charges if Eric McCutcheon tried to solemnize a ceremony. CFI also made clear that its members really wanted people like him to perform these ceremonies. Check this out in the lawsuit. This is number 25. A ceremony solemnized by secular elected officials is often not an acceptable alternative. They're talking about judges for any number of reasons, including limitations on the time and place ceremonies may occur, the risk of the inclusion of religious concepts and language in the ceremony contrary to the couple's desires, the aversion to the governmental overtone that the elected official's presence carries, and the anonymity of the official who typically will not know the couple personally and therefore unable to construct a service which expresses the couple's values and personalities. And this makes so much sense to me. I wouldn't want a judge performing my wedding. They don't know me. They don't know what to say necessarily. They have their script of whatever they're using, but it's not personal for me. I can tell you for my wedding, I had a friend of mine who is one of these types of celebrants do the wedding. It was great. He knew me well. You know what I mean? It was awesome. So I get why people in Texas would want a celebrant to do it. This lawsuit also says in number 26, as an organization, the Center for Inquiry also wishes to have its secular celebrants perform weddings for all those who request it. It's an important community service, ... Okay. So CFI was saying, let me pull this up right here. This is what their lawyer said at the time. Requiring religious affiliation in order to celebrate a marriage in Texas and imposing criminal penalties on those who would choose otherwise turns non-believers into second-class citizens. We believe this statutory requirement is unconstitutional and must be changed. So absolutely, I agree. Now, here's where it gets a little weird. CFI tried to file a lawsuit to overturn this law in 2018. And the plaintiff was the same dude, Eric McCutcheon, and they did it in Dallas County. That lawsuit was dismissed in 2019. And basically, what that judge said at the time is that the law as written was constitutional. And basically what they said is there are a bunch of rules the Supreme Court has for why something might be violating church-state separation. And basically none of them applied to that law. The law wasn't targeting non-religious people. And basically, if you're arguing that this is unconstitutional, I'm saying it's not. This is from 2019 when this judge said no. The fact that the law does not allow every secular individual trained to solemnize marriages to legally solemnize marriages in Texas does not make the law unconstitutional. And my read of that is the judge is saying, look, if you don't want a religious person to do your wedding ceremony, you can get a judge to do it. It's fine. So you're not really burdened by this. Go away. And so why is CFI doing this now? I don't know whether they thought a different judge in a different district might lead to a different result. I don't know if it's because the Supreme Court has changed its thinking on religious tests that can be used. But even so, I think this law is bad. And I think the harm, the benefit of overturning this law is obvious. The harm, if you change the law, is non-existent. But guess what happened? This time around, this is what just happened earlier this month. The judge in the case, who happens to be a George W. Bush appointee, Reed O'Connor, he dismissed the case altogether. He threw it out. And what he said is that one of the issues that the judge had to consider is the Center for Inquiry a religious organization? Because if it is a religious organization, guess what? Religious organizations can already perform these ceremonies for their trained people. And the judge admitted CFI is not a religious organization. I actually like what the judge said right over here, because Texas lawyers were saying CFI is religious. But look at this. At oral argument, the Attorney General discarded the history and tradition of the Texas law, saying that Satanism and atheism are basically religious. Interpreting the terms religion and religious organization to cover Satanism and atheism not only ignores history and tradition, but distorts their plain meaning and risks setting a dangerous precedent, which is a long way of saying, as a judge, I am not going to say atheism is a religion, so CFI is religious, therefore this law goes away. That's a dumb reason I'm not doing it. So good on the judge. He's right about that. But ultimately, this is what the judge said. He said, I'm not letting this go forward. And you tell me what you think about this argument right here. Here, the facts alleged support neither a credible nor a substantial threat of prosecution. The only fact in the complaint about the defendant is that he may bring criminal charges against an unauthorized celebrant who solemnizes a wedding. That injury is wholly speculative. And so basically, the plaintiff is saying, if I perform a wedding ceremony and I'm not religious, and Center for Inquiry is the one who has said it's okay, I might be arrested or fined because I'm breaking the law. And the judge is saying, you're not going to be arrested. There's nothing that suggests you're going to be arrested. Now, I read the law. I showed you the law. It says only the following people can do the marriage. Basically, they're telling this guy, we don't believe you're going to be arrested. So go ahead and perform the wedding ceremonies that you want to perform. And let's see what the district attorney or the county clerk does. And then maybe we have a case. But for now, I don't think you're going to get in trouble. So stop filing this lawsuit. That's basically what this judge is saying. And they also said one more thing here, which, again, I found kind of weird. Look at this. Unlike other cases involving pre-enforcement challenges, individual plaintiff provides no examples of past enforcement, no public statements regarding enforcement of the statute, no facts about how the district attorney could know a secular celebrant violated the law. I don't know. The judge is saying, look, you say you're going to be arrested if you do this, but it's not like the local government has said you're going to be arrested. It's not like you've been arrested. So when you do, come back to me. But until then, you'd got nothing, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to declare a law unconstitutional. I don't know. Just because someone hasn't been prosecuted in the past doesn't mean the law is meaningless or not discriminatory. Like, all you need is one conservative district attorney who wants to apply the law as written for the obvious problems to appear. And just because a district attorney doesn't take a close look at who a wedding officiant is, doesn't mean that person should have the power to prosecute someone who doesn't follow the rules. So this case was dismissed. It could be filed again if someone gets prosecuted. But for now, there's just no movement on the issue. This bad law is still in the books. I did find it weird that the Center for Inquiry hasn't said anything about this ruling, even though it's like their case, and it's not like they do a lot of cases. So that's weird. And by the way, I feel obligated to point out, I'm not really a fan of the Center for Inquiry. This is a group that merged with the Richard Dawkins Foundation. It promotes anti-trans bigotry. It has platformed anti-trans people. They do not accept racial injustice as a real problem in the country. So I don't even like the organization lately. But for what it's worth, I think this lawsuit was a good one, even though it got dismissed. Okay, gonna stop here. What questions we got? Thanks for sticking with me. I know it's been a long night. Yeah, no, if some MAGA douche finds out and tattles, that guy will be arrested. And if that happens, if he performs a ceremony, and if he does get arrested, I guess I'm just mad that the Texas courts are telling this guy, yeah, when you get arrested, come back to us. Even though this law on paper is discriminatory, we're not going to change anything for now. Years ago, by the way, there was a lawsuit in South Carolina by an atheist who was not allowed to be a notary public because he had to sign a statement of faith. And they basically, I forgot the specifics. The guy was Herb Silverman. He's a friend. I like the guy. He later ran for governor as the candidate without a prayer because South Carolina is a state that had one of those laws in the books that say you have to believe in a higher power to hold elected office. And basically he wanted to sue over that, but they said, look, it's not enforceable. And the only way you could overturn that law in the books is if you actually got elected to governor and someone tried to use it against you, then maybe we would declare it unconstitutional. So he ran for governor. And he lost, but that was the purpose. It was a clever move. But in this case, the courts are saying the same thing. Like, they're waiting for someone to tattle. They're waiting for McCutcheon to get arrested before they do anything, which I don't know why you should have to wait, but I'm sure there are legal reasons for it, but seems silly. What else? Oh my God, what if my trans daughter wants me to perform her wedding, but I can't get a religious organization to ordain me in time? I mean, I think the take here is that you can go to a judge and they will do it. And if you can't get a judge to do it, then maybe there's an argument to be made. You can get a friend to do the wedding using one of those online churches that gives you ordination in 5 minutes and a credit card. So you do have options, even if you don't have every option you want. So this argument, even though it's valid, legally speaking, you probably don't have a case. All right. Thank you so much. I know it was a long one. Thank you, Den, for helping out with the moderation and everything. Remember, you can always subscribe to friendlyatheist.com. I hope the next time you see me, you will see something in the background as well. It'll look nice and pretty. And hopefully when I watch any of this, there's no square box around my head. We'll see. All right, I'm done. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week.